Chapter 152. Ning Shu was a little surprised. What did Li Yufei want to ask him? Ning Shu approached Li Yufei and asked, "Miss Yufei, what do you want to ask me?" Li Yufei immediately took a step back, covered her nose, and asked, "Your brother Sheng's personal maid. Do you know if brother Sheng has someone he likes?" Ning Shu blinked her panda eyes and raised her eyebrows that were as thick as caterpillars. She said in surprise, "Why do you ask, Miss Yufei? Your young master's true love." "No, what I mean is that Miss Yufei is the person young master likes." Ning Shu's words pleased Li Yufei. Li Yufei smiled and glanced at Ning Shu coquettishly. Ning Shu was flirted by her gaze. She wasn't Qi Sheng. Why was she showing such a seductive look to him? "Of course I know brother Sheng has me in his heart." Li Yufei's face was flushed. Ning Shu was speechless. She called her over just to say this? Was she trying to attack her? But the smile on Li Yufei's face dissipated a little. She looked at Ning Shu and said, "But I feel that there's someone else in brother Sheng's heart. I can feel it very keenly." A woman's intuition was really scary, and it was all true. Ning Shu waved his hand and said, "Miss Yufei, you're thinking too much. If you have this feeling, it's nothing more than that." "What's that?" Li Yufei frowned and looked at Ning Shu. Ning Shu stomped her feet shyly and covered her face as she said, "Oh, Miss Yufei, you know." Li Yufei's face darkened as she said, "If you have something to say, just say it." Ahem. Ning Shu coughed and said, "Miss Yufei, do you feel a little bored in bed and think young master is tired of you?" "What are you talking about?" Li Yufei's face flushed red, and she was extremely shy. Ning Shu thought, "I didn't see you shy when we were having sex. Your shy look is really annoying. Don't all men like novelty?" Ning Shu grinned at Li Yufei. Li Yufei looked at Ning Shu and asked, "What do you have in mind?" "If you want to capture a man's heart, you have to make him unable to stop," Ning Shu said in a very experienced manner. Li Yufei looked at Ning Shu and said, "Why can't you stop? I feel like you're quite experienced." "Ahem, Miss Yufei, you're so annoying." Ning Shu covered his face with a handkerchief. "I'm just a so..." Li Yufei narrowed her eyes. "In that case, you'll be my maid from now on. I'll tell brother Sheng." How did she become Li Yufei's maidservant? Life was full of ups and downs. He thought he still had to go back and wash the toilet bowl. "Go ahead, tell me your experience," Li Yufei said very grandly. "As long as the matter is done well, there will be many benefits for you." Ning Shu was speechless. He braced himself. Ning Shu smiled very wretchedly. He patted his chest and said loudly, "Miss Yufei, leave this matter to me. I'll definitely do it properly." Li Yufei hummed arrogantly. At night, Qi Xing came to find Li Yufei. When he saw Ning Shu standing by the door, he asked sternly, "Why are you here? Aren't you a servant? Why are you here?" Ning Shu said lightly, "I'm now Miss Yufei's maid." Li Yufei walked over and said gently to Qi Sheng, "Brother Sheng, Yufei found this little girl quite interesting, so I kept her by my side. Brother Sheng won't blame Yufei, right?" Qi Sheng held Li Yufei's hand and said affectionately, "It's just a maidservant. As long as you're happy, it's fine. But this maidservant is very stupid. She doesn't do things properly and her looks are barely satisfactory. You should pick a better maidservant. Brother Sheng, you're so good to Yufei. Yufei is thinking that Yufei can't leave you in this life." Li Yufei leaned on Qi Sheng's chest. Ning Shu watched from the side. They were so affectionate as if there was no one else around. Did they consider the feelings of the people around them? The lovey-dovey party should be burned to death. Li Yufei gave Ning Shu a look. Ning Shu tactfully went out and closed the door considerately. Then he stood at the door. In the room, Li Yufei took off her clothes, revealing her snow-white skin. She wasn't wearing a doo-doo, but modern underwear. She was wearing underwear below. Her waist was thin and her legs were slender. It was indescribably tempting. Qi Sheng, who was drinking tea, spat out his tea and stared blankly at Li Yufei. Li Yufei walked to Qi Sheng in an enchanting and charming manner and sat on Qi Sheng's lap. "Brother Sheng, Yufei specially prepared this. Do you like it?" Qi Sheng felt his nose itch and hurriedly buried his head in Li Yufei's chest. Li Yufei's face revealed a smug expression. This was the first time she had seen Qi Xing so excited. Brother Xing, Yufei also prepared a surprise. Li Yufei became even more charming. Qi Xing panted and said in a low voice, "What surprise? I'm very surprised now. Good sister, you're so beautiful." Li Yufei was even more certain that Xiao Hong's method was right. Hence, she took out a whip from the box. Under Qi Xing's baffled expression, Li Yufei coquettishly whipped Qi Xing. Ning Shu heard Qi Xing's heart-wrenching wail from outside. Then he roared, "Li Yufei, what are you doing? Why are you whipping me?" Li Yufei said aggrievedly, "Is Brother Xing unhappy?" Li Yufei's voice became even more aggrieved. Yufei wore this kind of clothes for Brother Xing and even used a whip to make it more interesting. "I don't need a whip at all." "Stop it. Brother Xing, don't you love Yufei? Yufei changed like this because she loves you. Brother Xing, this is very exciting." Li Yufei waved the whip as she spoke. "Yufei, put down the whip first. Of course, I know you love me. I love you too. Don't use the whip." Ouch! Qi Xing's wails and the sound of the whip mixed in the room. Ning Shu looked at the two of them through the crack of the door. As if they were too excited, the two of them started on the ground. They didn't care about the cold ground and fought with all their might. Qi Xing's attacks were very fierce, making Li Yufei's cries especially exaggerated. Her cadence could be heard even from outside the courtyard. "Tis. Can you keep your voice down? The entire Qi mansion probably knows that you two are having sex. You have no integrity and no sense of shame." Ning Shu saw the purplish-red whip marks on Qi Xing's body through the crack of the door. Ning Shu shook his head regretfully. This kind of whip didn't have a barb. If it had a barb and soaked in salt and chili water, it would feel good to whip Qi Xing. How good would it be if he could whip Qi Xing? Ning Shu felt very melancholy. He suddenly missed the time when he had infinite strength. Chapter 153. Ning Shu's legs were numb from standing outside. Inside, they were still having sex. Previously, Ning Shu had suspected that something had happened to Qi Xing's penis. Now, it seemed that it was still very mighty. How could something happen to the male lead's penis? Ning Shu lowered his numb legs and heard the door creak open. He looked up and saw Qi Xing come out pretentiously. His face was flushed, and his expression was both happy and angry. Anyway, it was hard to describe. Qi Xing glanced at Ning Shu's ugly face and said in a hoarse voice, "In the future, when I come here, you can only stay outside. I don't want to see your face." Ning Shu thought, "I fucking want to see you?" Ning Shu lowered his head and didn't speak. Qi Xing snorted and left. Ning Shu walked into the room and smelled a strong scent of sex. Li Yufei sat lazily on a chair with only a piece of clothing draped over her body. Her face was full of satisfaction and aftertaste, as if she was still savoring it. Ning Shu covered his eyes. It was too dirty. What a world without moral integrity. Li Yufei opened her eyes and saw Ning Shu. She smiled at Ning Shu and said, "Your method is quite useful. I've never seen Brother Xing so excited. He's so passionate and wild, as if he wants to eat me. Even now, my legs are still weak." "Don't say it, please don't say it. A pure person like her shouldn't hear these words." Ning Shu quickly changed the topic. "Why don't you stay for the night, young master?" Li Yufei's voice was thick and nasal. She seemed to be a little shy as she said, "Brother Xing and I haven't married yet. It's not suitable for us to stay for the night." Ning Shu was speechless. It was like taking off your pants to fart. Everyone in the Qi mansion knows what you two did. Now you want to pretend to abide by etiquette? Don't do it. Ning Shu looked at Li Yufei with a wooden face. Li Yufei's face was still filled with pleasure as she closed her eyes and fell asleep. "Ning Shu, at least go to bed. Is it really okay to sleep naked in this hall?" Ning Shu turned around and left without even closing the door. After returning to their residence, Yulan hurriedly came over to Ning Shu and asked, "Miss, that woman didn't do this to you, right?" "It's okay, your young miss is fine." Ning Shu felt really tired and fell asleep on the bed. The next day, Ning Shu was sleeping soundly when he was pulled out of bed. Ning Shu opened his eyes and saw that it was Li Yufei's maid. He immediately said, "Big sister, what is it that you won't let me sleep for?" The maid said, "What time is it now? You're still sleeping. Miss is looking for you." Ning Shu pursed his lips and followed the maid to see Li Yufei. Li Yufei's entire body seemed to be shrouded in a rosy glow. Her skin was pink and tender, and it was obvious that she had been nourished by someone. She was simply radiant. "Xiaohong, come here. This is your reward." Li Yufei gave Ning Shu a purse. Ning Shu opened it and saw 2 heavy ingots of silver. Ning Shu quickly put away the silver. It would be a waste not to take it. "You did well this time," Li Yufei said. "Last night, I saw that Brother Xing didn't like the whip very much. Is there any other way?" Ning Shu raised his thick eyebrows and said, "If you don't like the whip, then drip wax on it. You still have to use the whip. This time, you don't have to hit the young master. Let the young master hit you. These things need to be slowly adjusted. When the young master is used to this kind of stimulation, he will have no interest in other women. Naturally, his heart will be with Miss Yufei in the future." "Then help me prepare," Li Yufei said. Ning Shu nodded. Ning Shu knew that Qi Xing wouldn't come to find Li Yufei. After all, he had screamed so miserably last night. However, Qi Xing still came. Looking at the incomparably beautiful Li Yufei, he had a conflicted expression. Ning Shu felt that Qi Xing still had potential in his bones. Qi Xing also felt it. When the whip hit a person's body, the burning sensation caused a tremor. It was painful and seemed to be accompanied by pleasure. This strange feeling made Qi Xing feel very strange. He felt a different kind of experience and pleasure. Therefore, after hesitating for a long time, Qi Xing still came to find Li Yufei. On the spot, they carried out a new method. The candle dripped on his chest. Qi Xing's expression seemed to be painful and happy. He waved the whip in his hand and hit Li Yufei, who was kneeling on the ground with all 4 limbs. The whip hit Li Yufei's white skin, and in an instant, purplish-red whip marks appeared. However, Qi Xing felt that his blood rushed to his head and his hair stood up. His whole body seemed to have been struck by lightning, and the electricity made all the cells in his body tremble. Li Yufei screamed in pain, but Qi Xing was even more excited and kept whipping Li Yufei. Ning Shu was outside the door and looked at the scene inside through the crack of the door. Did she open the door to a new world for these two? Don't thank her too much. In the following time, Li Yufei and Qi Xing seemed to be enjoying themselves, which greatly exceeded Ning Shu's expectations. This is fucking possible? Sure enough, it was a world without logic. It only needed a little spark to burn into a big fire, and it felt like it couldn't be stopped. Ning Shu's theoretical knowledge was emptied by Li Yufei, and then Li Yufei and Qi Xing found their own way to complete the trick. Those scenes made Ning Shu stunned. Tied up and stuffed under. Ning Shu was a little disgusted. It was simply too evil. The evil of human nature could explode with just a little trigger. Ning Shu decided to leave. Seeing that Qi Xing and Li Yufei were having so much fun, he decided to let them be together for the rest of their lives. In the evening, Ning Shu leaned against the wall of the courtyard and looked at Li Yufei's room. The room was brightly lit. Ning Shu was waiting for a surprise. When there was a surprise, he immediately left. "Miss, are you done? This servant can't do it anymore." Yulan gasped and said. She struggled to grab Ning Shu's ankle on her shoulder to prevent Ning Shu from falling. Right away, right away. Thank you for your hard work, dear." Ning Shu stood on Yulan's shoulder and stared at Li Yufei's room. Then he heard Li Yufei's voice change and wail. This wail contained infinite pain. It was different from the usual painful and joyful voice. Ning Shu suddenly wanted to look up to the sky and laugh. The painful voice continued. Ning Shu jumped down from Yulan's shoulder and quickly said to Yulan, "Io, it's really hard on my little darling." The black-clothed and masked shadow guard looked at Ning Shu and Yulan and said, "Miss, if you want to see something, you can just sit on the courtyard wall. Why go through the trouble of stepping on people's shoulders?" Ning Shu felt that the shadow guard was distressed for Yulan, so he said this. He quickly nudged Yulan with his elbow. Yulan looked at Ning Shu inexplicably. "Miss, what are you looking at?" Yulan asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu waved his hand. "It's not suitable for children to know. Let's go." Chapter 154. Ning Shu and the other two left E City under the cover of the night. The brightly lit room of the Qi residence was bloody and sexy. Qi Xing held a whip in his hand and whipped Li Yufei on the ground. Li Yufei's body was covered with whip marks and dripping with blood. She kept moaning and shouted at Qi Xing, "Brother Xing, stop hitting me. Yufei is in so much pain." Li Yufei felt the pain of being whipped and convulsed. Every time, she felt as if a piece of flesh had been hooked away. Qi Xing's eyes were red, but he was even more excited. He panted and comforted Li Yufei, "It's okay. Does it feel good? Yufei, I love you more and more now. I love you so much that I can't wait to whip you to death." Li Yufei was furious. Her body was in so much pain that she wanted to die. She smiled at Qi Xing and said, "Brother Xing, give the whip to Yufei." Li Yufei took the whip and whipped Qi Xing fiercely. Qi Xing was in pain and pleasure. In the end, the two of them hugged each other with all kinds of excitement. Ning Shu sat in the carriage and whistled leisurely. He looked in the direction of his city and was very happy. He estimated that Li Yufei's snow-white skin would be ruined. As for whether her face would be hit by the whip, Ning Shu didn't know. She had specially made this whip. It had tiny barbs. Moreover, this whip had been soaked in salt and chili water. If one was hit by the whip, the wound would probably be inflamed. It would be very normal for it to leave a scar. Ning Shu still remembered that Mu Yanluo was disfigured by Li Yufei. This was an eye for an eye. Ning Shu wiped off the heavy makeup on his face and felt that his head had become lighter. He felt very happy. Ning Shu whistled again. "Miss, can you stop whistling?" Yuelon said with a red face. Ning Shu asked, "What's wrong?" "Your whistling is making me want to go to the toilet." Yuelon stammered. Just as Yulan's voice fell, the carriage stopped. Ning Shu mischievously said to Yulan, "Look at how considerate Brother Shadow Guard is." Yuelon's face turned even redder. She lifted the curtain and went out. Ning Shu's stomach also growled. He said to Yuelon, "Let's go together. Your young miss also has a bit of a stomachache. She probably ate too much chicken drumsticks at night." Ning Shu squatted beside Yuelon as the two of them chatted. Ning Shu said to Yuelon, "Miss, you're not young anymore. Have you ever thought about settling down? It's not a good idea to follow your young miss around like this. This servant has always been by Miss's side. Wherever Miss goes, this servant will follow." Yuelon covered her nose and said, "Miss, you should eat less meat in the future. I feel that your stomach has been a little bad recently. It's a little smelly." Ning Shu was speechless. Wasn't it cruel to say such words to a beauty? Beauties were otherworldly. Ning Shu couldn't find anything to wipe his butt with. In the end, he bitterly used tree leaves. He felt that the ancient times were really bitter. Next time, he would just buy rice paper to wipe his butt. The burrs on the leaves were really prickly. When they returned to the carriage, the shadow guard Ning Shu, who was driving the carriage, asked, "Where are we going now?" "Let me think." Shin Qingqing also didn't know where the scholar with a belly full of wisdom was. In the plot, Qi Xing sent the disfigured and dying Mu Yanluo away. But he didn't expect that as soon as Mu Yanluo left, Li Yufei would send a thug to kill Mu Yanluo. Mu Yanluo lost her footing and fell off a cliff. She was rescued by a scholar and brought home. Where was that remote village? Ning Shu didn't know. Or did he want her to jump off a cliff again? "Miss, where are we going?" the shadow guard asked. "How the fuck do I know where to go?" Ning Shu said directly, "Go straight on this road. When you reach a fork in the road, turn left. Then keep turning left. When you see a village, go in." The shadow guard was speechless. Ning Shu was so capricious. No matter what, the male and female leads would meet each other. Yulan asked worriedly, "Miss, what if we get lost?" "It's okay. There are always some shining existences guiding your miss forward." Ning Shu supported her chin and said. Yulan was confused and shook her head. "I don't understand." Ning Shu seemed to think of something and said to the shadow guard, "Do you have paper on you?" "Miss, what do you need paper for?" Yulan asked. "I'm used to using paper. I'm not used to using leaves." Ning Shu said. Yuelan's eyes immediately filled with tears as she said sorrowfully, "Miss, you used to use paper. Now that it's your turn, Master will definitely feel very distressed." "Miss, are leaves comfortable to use?" Find a smooth stone, it's much more comfortable than leaves. Ning Shu covered her face. She was just borrowing toilet paper. Why did it lead to such a dirty topic? She felt like she was going crazy. Ning Shu and Yulan talked and fell asleep. They leaned against each other and fell asleep. The sound of the horses' hooves was very rhythmic. The wilderness at night was very quiet. Occasionally, there would be two strange bird calls. Ding 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 ding. Li Yufei's abuse points are 100. Qi Sheng's abuse points are 100. 2333's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu stretched and showed a happy expression. Li Yufei's abuse points were 100. Her skin was probably ruined. As for how Qi Sheng's abuse points came about, Ning Shu didn't know. His skin was probably ruined like Li Yufei's. TSK. In fact, Qi Sheng's abuse points were because he found that the maid named Little Red was missing the next day. He searched the whole Qi mansion but couldn't find her. Qi Sheng felt a sense of loss in his heart. This feeling had nothing to do with love. It was because he found out that he missed a pearl covered in dust. It was a kind of anger that scratched his heart and lungs. Qi Sheng guessed that this person named Little Red must be Mu Yanluo. She suddenly ran away, which made Qi Sheng very angry. He went to ask Li Yufei where Little Red was, but Li Yufei was busy saving her skin. The whip marks all over her body were inflamed and swollen. She didn't care about Little Red. Moreover, Li Yufei hated Little Red in her heart. Their props were all prepared by Little Red. This whip suddenly had a barb, and so much material was added. Now that Little Red had run away, Li Yufei didn't even want to talk about Little Red. Qi Sheng was very angry, but he couldn't directly tell Li Yufei that Little Red was Mu Yanluo. Qi Sheng still couldn't bear to part with Li Yufei, especially since they had a common hobby. Qi Sheng couldn't forget Mu Yanluo. He even imagined Mu Yanluo's white and flawless skin blooming with blood under his whip. Just thinking about it made Qi Sheng tremble all over, and a look of enjoyment appeared on his face. As he thought about it, Qi Sheng became excited. He pulled Li Yufei up from the bed and put the dog muzzle around her neck. He said to Li Yufei, "Come on, bark like a dog." Li Yufei's whip wounds hadn't healed yet. She felt a burning pain when her clothes rubbed against them. But when Li Yufei saw Qi Sheng's evil appearance, her body began to heat up and tremble. Chapter 155. Ning Shu and the others wandered around for a long time. Ning Shu was a little confused. Why hadn't they found Brother Shu Sheng after such a long time? Where had the attraction between the male and female leads gone? Where had the plot gone? Ning Shu lifted the curtain and said to the secret guard driving the carriage, "Is there a place to rest?" The secret guard covered his face with a black cloth. Only his eyes and forehead were exposed. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "I haven't found a village yet." Ning Shu frowned. Yuelan said, "Miss, why don't we turn right? If we can't find it, we'll turn right." Ning Shu was speechless. "Forget it, I'm a little tired. Let's set up camp." Ning Shu waved his hand and said, "The secret guard said, there's no need to go through so much trouble. There's no need to set up camp. You and Yuelan can rest in the carriage. I'll find a tree to sleep in. But I don't want to sit in the carriage anymore. I've been in the carriage for so long. I want to lie down and sleep for the night." Ning Shu said with a bitter face. In the carriage, he felt that he couldn't straighten his hands and feet. He felt very tired. The secret guard looked at Ning Shu with a gaze that said, "You're a princess again." Ning Shu was a little annoyed by the secret guard's gaze. He said, "There's only the three of us. Why are you covering your face? Do you know that you're very attractive like this? We have to keep a low profile." "How can we keep a low profile when you look like you want to rob the rich and give to the poor?" The secret guard didn't say anything, nor did he take off the black cloth. Then, he went to find a place to set up camp. Ning Shu covered his heart and looked hurt. He said to Yuelan, "Your secret guard is so cold." Yuelan said with a straight face, "Miss, the secret guard doesn't belong to this servant's family. He belongs to your family." Ning Shu was speechless. The secret guard was still more caring. He even roasted some game for Ning Shu and Yuelan. The shadow guard handed over something that looked like a chicken or a pigeon. Ning Shu quickly reached out to take the roasted chicken, But the shadow guard turned his hand and handed it to Yulan. Yulan was stunned at first. She took the roast chicken and saw Ning Shu's awkward look. She handed the roast chicken to Ning Shu and said, "Miss, why don't you eat first?" Ning Shu's face trembled as he reluctantly said, "No need, you can eat it. This is from Brother Dark Guard." "Miss, please eat." Yulan, Ning Shu said. "Ning Shu, I'm really not eating." Yulan, "Miss, you should eat. This servant knows that you like to eat meat recently." Ning Shu, "No need, you can eat it. Big Brother Dark Guardian gave it to you." Yulan, "Why don't we share it?" Ning Shu's face twitched violently. It was a skinny chicken. As for this, Ning Shu stuffed the chicken into Yulan's mouth. "I told you to eat, so eat. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Yulan gnawed on the fragrant roast chicken. Ning Shu said, "Miss, it's quite fragrant. No wonder Master likes to eat game so much. It's very fragrant. Miss, wait a moment. The secret guard is about to finish roasting it." Ning Shu stared at the roast chicken in the secret guard's hand and swallowed his saliva. Suddenly, the secret guard threw the roast chicken into the fire. Then, he pulled out his sword and pointed it at a certain place. He shouted loudly, "Who is it?" Yuelan threw away the roast chicken in her hand that had only bones left and righteously stood in front of Ning Shu. She imitated the cool tone of the secret guard brother and shouted loudly, "Who are you? Come out and die. Don't even think about hurting my family's young miss." "Ning Shu, why did you expose your miss?" Ning Shu quickly covered his face with a veil, only revealing a pair of eyes. After a series of rustling sounds, a man wearing a green robe with a bamboo basket on his back walked over. He cupped his hands and said politely, "I didn't mean to disturb you. It's just that the sky is a bit dark and I want to borrow some fire." Ning Shu slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at the man. It was too dark to see clearly, but he spoke politely. He had a strong feeling in his heart that this guy must be the male lead. Ning Shu coughed and said, "It's fate that we meet. Such a warrior, come and drink a cup of water." The green-robed man elegantly cupped his hands and said to Ning Shu, "Thank you, Mississippi's." The green-robed man put down the bamboo basket on his back. There were some herbs in the bamboo basket. Ning Shu was confused for a moment. Was this guy a scholar or a divine doctor? Ning Shu's shadow guard said, "See if the roast chicken in the fire is still edible. Let this warrior have a taste." The shadow guard glanced at Ning Shu and pulled out a black ball of roast chicken from the fire. It seemed that it was inedible. The green-robed man quickly said, "Brother, there's no need to trouble yourself. I have my own dry food." As he spoke, he took out his own pancake. Seeing that the three people were staring at him, he took out a few more. Ning Shu said, "It's something from the countryside. I don't know if you'll like it." "It's okay." Ning Shu took a bite of the pancake and almost broke his teeth. It was really hard. After taking a bite, he handed the pancake to Yulan and said, "You should also try it. It's good for your bowels." When the green-robed man heard Ning Shu's words, he frowned in discomfort. However, he didn't say anything in the end. Yulan took the pancake and took a bite. Then, she handed the pancake to the shadow guard. The shadow guard took a bite and put away the pancake. He said indifferently, "This pancake is quite rare." The green-robed man quickly waved his hand and said, "It's not rare. It's just some crude food from the countryside. It's fine as long as you like it." As he spoke, he gnawed on the pancake and took out some water from the bamboo basket. Ning Shu and the other two stared blankly at him as he gnawed on the pancake. His teeth were really good. Ning Shu coughed and asked, May I ask for your name?" The man in the qipao seemed to be a little disgusted by the name warrior. He put down the pancake and cupped his hands elegantly. "I'm called Wenruhua." "Oh, a scholar." It was really a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. As expected, the attraction between the male and female leads led to the male lead naturally delivering himself to the door. Ning Shu immediately grabbed Wenruhua's hand. Wenruhua was startled and hurriedly broke free from Ning Shu's hand. He frowned and said, "Miss, men and women shouldn't touch each other clearly. I hope you will respect yourself." The shadow guard and Yuelan at the side looked at Ning Shu strangely. Ning Shu forced himself to squeeze out 2 drops of cat piss. He said in an agitated and sorrowful voice, "Cousin, I'm Qinxiang. By Qinxiang." "Cousin?" The shadow guard and Yuelon looked at Ning Shu even more strangely. Wen Ruhua, on the other hand, looked as if she had been struck by lightning. She looked at Ning Shu in a daze, his voice trembling with uncertainty. "Cousin?" It's me." Ning Shu replied crisply. Wen Ruhua's expression was very complicated. There was sadness, agitation, resentment, and a trace of deep longing and love. Her face was distorted. "You look like you've changed a lot." When Ruhua looked at Ning Shu suspiciously, "Are you really cousin Qinxiang?" It's me. "I'm by Qinxiang," Ning Shu said with certainty. When Ruhua's face instantly twisted. Ning Shu roared, "Then why did you come back? Why did you come back?" Chapter 156. When Ruhua was so agitated that her body trembled. Ning Shu roared and his saliva almost splashed onto Ning Shu. Ning Shu hurriedly took a step back and said in a sorrowful tone, "Cousin, are you still blaming Qinxiang?" When Ruhua's expression was ugly. She was so angry that she couldn't speak. Yuelon couldn't stand it anymore. She pulled Ning Shu to the side and asked, "Miss, when did you change your name? When did you have such a distant cousin?" Ning Shu patted Yuelon's head and comforted her. "Be good, don't make a fuss. Your miss naturally has her reasons." When Ruhua looked at Ning Shu with a complicated expression and asked, "Why did you come back this time?" "Naturally, I came back to find cousin," Ning Shu said matter-of-factly. When Ruhua was so angry that she gasped for breath. She looked at Ning Shu with red eyes and said, "You're already married. Why did you come back to find me? What do you take me for?" There was actually a rather twisted story that changed Wen Ruhua's fate. It was just that Wen Ruhua and his engaged cousin were in love with each other. Moreover, Wen Ruhua was a very talented person with a good family background. Wen Ruhua promised to marry by Qinxiang as soon as he passed the imperial examination. However, before Wen Ruhua could take the imperial examinations, she was struck by a bolt from the blue. Her cousin's father ignored the engagement and directly betrothed by Qinxiang to the son of a high official. Moreover, that high official wasn't someone he could afford to offend. When Ruhua wanted to find Bai Qinxiang for an explanation. They were so in love in the past, but her cousin married someone else just like that. When Ruhua found Bai Qinxiang said guiltily, "I'm sorry, cousin. I can't wait any longer. Instead of waiting for you to take the imperial examinations, I'd rather choose someone who's already successful and famous. Cousin, forget about me. You have someone more worthy of your love." When Ruhua simply couldn't believe it. In the past, they had been so sweet and intimate. In the blink of an eye, he could be so heartless. So what if they had feelings for each other in the past? When Ruhua's liver was about to explode from anger. Women were all vain sluts, and those officials were all tyrannical executioners who brought misery to people's lives. This world was really dark and filthy. After when Ruhua got drunk, she abandoned her family business and ran to a remote village to teach. She often lamented that she was full of wisdom but had no use for it. However, she also despised the darkness of the official path. When Ruhua swore that she would never step into the officialdom in this lifetime. When Ruhua hated that official's son for stealing her beloved. She even hated that official. She hid in this corner and prepared to spend the rest of her life there. The corner of Ning Shu's mouth twitched. He felt that when Ruhua's brain was different from that of ordinary men. Normally, a strong-willed man would work hard when faced with this kind of situation. He would work hard to climb up and then go back to slap his cousin's cheap face. He would marry a woman who was better than his cousin and live a better life. He would take revenge on his cousin and make her regret it. However, when Ruhua directly shrunk back and hid, she was depressed that she couldn't achieve her goal. She was extremely pretentious. Even Ning Shu didn't like this man. A man's responsibility and wisdom were undoubtedly revealed when something big happened. However, when Ruhua was clearly the kind of person who didn't have much responsibility. Sometimes, he felt that she was quite childish and quite a bit of a narcissist. "Why don't you say something? Why did you come back? Did that official's son abandon you?" You're not a pretty girl to begin with, so of course he's tired of you. Wenrua's voice was a little shrill, as if she was venting her anger. Ding, abuse points 20. Ning Shu moi, did you miss your family? 2333's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu, scram? A woman who doesn't mean what she says. 2333 coldly snorted and disappeared. Say something. Why didn't you say anything? Why did you come back to me? Did you think that I would still accept you? I was tricked by you once. I won't be tricked by you a second time. Wenruhua screamed hysterically at Ning Shu. Ning Shu was communicating with the system in his mind. Wenruhua's screams were almost deafening. Ning Shu couldn't help but dig his ears. Previously, Wenruhua looked like a scholar. Why was he acting like a chunibu now? Young man, your image has been ruined quite a bit. Hey, who are you? How dare you say such things to my young miss? Do you believe that I'll let the young miss's secret guards poke you into a sieve? Yu Lan and Wenruhua retorted, know your identity. Our young miss is not someone you can casually criticize. Wenruhua's face showed a bitter expression. She revealed a mocking and self-deprecating smile and said lightly, yes, who am I? Of course, I can't compare to you, the wife of an official. Yu Lan looked at Wenruhua as if she was looking at an idiot. Didn't he even suspect that her miss was her cousin? He didn't even try to verify it before roaring loudly here. Seriously. She felt that there was something wrong with his brain, and it was quite serious. The secret guards couldn't stand it anymore. Ning Shu asked, young miss, do you want to get a tent for your cousin? Before Ning Shu could open his mouth, Wenruhua immediately shouted, no need, Bai Qinxiang. I don't need your charity. I'll sleep outside. Ning Shu was speechless. She was so stubborn. Ning Shu thought that Wenruhua would just leave. Sleeping outside showed that she had a backbone? Ning Shu yawned. He really didn't want to argue with Wenruhua anymore. He pulled Yu Lan into the tent and said, turn off the lights and sleep. Wenruhua looked at the tent with a complicated expression. It was as if she wanted to see through the tent. The secret guards only glanced at Wenruhua. They took a rope and tied it between two trees. Then they slept on the rope like Xiaolongnu. However, they didn't have Xiaolongnu's elegant beauty. The secret guards were only frightened. Wenruhua saw that no one was paying attention to her. She leaned against a tree and stared blankly at Ning Shu's tent. Wenruhua stared until her eyes were red. From time to time, she would grind her teeth. In the quiet night, she looked particularly gloomy. Ning Shu was sleeping soundly in the tent with Yu Lan in his arms. He didn't know that Wenruhua was pacing back and forth outside the tent after a sleepless night. Even if Ning Shu knew, he wouldn't care. However, Wenruhua's heart was much more irritable. She couldn't help but wonder what happened to Bai Qinxiang. Why did she come back to find her? What did she think of her? Why did she abandon her just like that? Why was his heart still so unsettled? Why was he affected by this vain woman? Wenruhua paced outside the tent for the whole night. In the morning, she saw Ning Shu stretching comfortably. The anger that she had suppressed for the whole night was about to explode. However, when she saw Ning Shu's eyes under the veil, she was stunned. Chapter 157. Wenruhua looked at the exposed eyes and was stunned. She asked, Bai Qinxiang, why are you so different from before? Are you not Bai Qinxiang? It was dark and she was wearing a white veil. Wenruhua could not see her face clearly. Now, Wenruhua felt that this was not her cousin. Bai Qinxiang could only be considered delicate and pretty. She was not very tall. However, the person in front of her was tall and elegant. Obviously, this was not Bai Qinxiang. Ning Shu raised her eyebrows and said calmly, Cousin, I am Bai Qinxiang. I know that I broke the promise between us. But now, I have received my retribution. Wenruhua frowned. The person in front of her was not Bai Qinxiang. However, she seemed to know about her and Bai Qinxiang. What was going on? Wenruhua was dumbfounded. Ning Shu held her face in her hands and said, Do you feel that my eyes have become watery and that I've grown taller? After all, I married into a rich family. Eating sea cucumbers, abalone wings, and bathing in milk every day is very normal for there to be changes. If you eat well, you will naturally develop a second spring. Bai Qinxiang was only 15 or 16 when she married. If the real Bai Qinxiang stood in front of Wen Ruhua might not even recognize her. Are you showing off your rich and noble life to me? Wen Ruhua looked at Ning Shu coldly. Then why did you come back to me? Ding. Abuse points 20, current abuse points 40, 2333 said excitedly. Oh, not bad. You have 40 abuse points in one night. Ning Shu, do well. Maybe we will make a fortune this time. Ning Shu said, get lost. Heartless woman. I hate you. Don't you ever see me again. As 2333 wiped his tears, Ning Shu heard 2333's simulated footsteps in her head. 2333 yelled at Ning Shu, stop me. Stop me. Ning Shu, get away from me. Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua, who hadn't slept the entire night and looked very haggard. His green robes were stained with dust and grass, his face was haggard, and the stubble on his chin had turned blue. This image was too tragic. Wen Rua's heart ached when her cousin married another man out of vanity. Ning Shu's casual words triggered the pain in Wen Rua's heart. This was the unbearable pain that Wen Ruhua buried deep in her heart. Ning Shu felt that Wen Ruhua was both pitiful and hateful. She was a weak and incompetent person who couldn't take any blow and even gave up on her own life. She had no sense of responsibility at all. How could such a man become the male lead? He reckoned that he would have to share Mu Yanluo with the other 7 men in the future. Ning Shu would feel that he was being bullied. These male leads were either powerful, rich, or highly skilled in martial arts. They were neither good nor evil. But Wen Ruhua felt that it was completely meaningless. Even if she read a lot of books, it was useless. If she couldn't get the female lead, she would have to fuck herself. Ning Shu's imagination ran further and further away, and he felt that he couldn't pull it back. Wen Ruhua grabbed the bamboo basket and prepared to leave. Ning Shu hurriedly asked, where are you going? Wen Ruhua said coldly, naturally I'm going back. Ning Shu said, I'll go with you. Wen Ruhua immediately roared, Bai Qinxiang, I'm not something you can throw away as you wish. You're wasting your time. Ning Shu didn't care about Wen Ruhua's attitude at all. He got into the carriage and followed behind Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua was so angry that she quickened her pace. But how could her 2 legs outrun the 4 legs of a horse? Even if Wen Ruhua's 3rd leg was added, it was useless. Wen Ruhua really couldn't do anything about the people behind her. She could only let them go and ignore them. Yuelon lifted the curtain and looked at Wen Ruhua in front of her. Ning Shu asked, Miss, is there something wrong with that person's brain? There's nothing wrong with her. She just feels that she's the most miserable person in the world and feels sorry for herself. Ning Shu said lightly. For a woman, and for such an unworthy woman, she ruined her life and gave up her life. No, it should be Wen Ruhua who ruined her life. She ran away from home and didn't care about her parents who were already old. She ran to the countryside to teach and educate people. He really didn't know what kind of students Wen Ruhua taught were like. In the plot, Mu Yanluo was chased by the thugs sent by Li Yufei and fell off a cliff. She was saved by Wen Ruhua, who was picking herbs. Although she survived, Mu Yanluo's face was disfigured and her body was mottled with traces of torture. It was simply unbearable to look at. The world's most beautiful woman became an ugly person. Mu Yanluo could only light a mask and cover her head every day. Her face was covered and only her eyes could be seen. Mu Yanluo's heart was only numb to her disfigurement. She even let it be. Everything was because of her appearance and she had suffered such a thing. After Mu Yanluo recovered from her injuries, Wen Ruhua didn't drive her away. The 2 of them lived like this. Their relationship was ordinary. Mu Yanluo was grateful to Wen Ruhua for saving her. She helped Wen Ruhua with some housework, chopping firewood, cooking and washing clothes. Just like that they settled down. Sometimes, Mu Yanluo would send food to the school. She was ridiculed by Wen Ruhua's students as ugly. Some bold and naughty students even threw stones at Mu Yanluo. Wen Ruhua despised Mu Yanluo for embarrassing herself. She couldn't be a person in front of the students and couldn't establish her prestige in front of the students. She forbade Mu Yenluo from coming to the school in the future. Otherwise, she would drive her out. Mu Yenluo was very sad. From a beautiful woman to an ugly person, the difference was too big. Although Mu Yenluo's face was disfigured, her exposed eyes were very charming. They were as clear as water, flickering with a burning light. Just a glance at them would make one's bones go soft. Because of these eyes, Mu Yenluo was fancied by the village head's son. This village bully was also desperate. He directly said that although her face was disfigured, her eyes were still very beautiful. She was a woman after all. Once the lights were turned off and the quilt was turned off, she would be the same as a woman. When Ruhua heard about this, she ridiculed Mu Yenluo. She said that Mu Yenluo couldn't stand loneliness even though her face was disfigured. Did all women like to hook up with powerful men? The village head's son was definitely someone with power and influence in this village. He reminded Ruhua of her cousin, the one who betrayed her and became a rich madam. Women were all so ungrateful. Ruhua and the village head's son didn't get along. If it weren't for the fact that Ruhua was the only teacher in the village bully would have long wanted to kill this ignorant Ruhua. Ruhua hated people with power and couldn't see eye to eye with this village bully. She felt that this village bully was simply a bully in the village. People were angry but didn't dare to say anything. The village bully thought that Ruhua had a hole in her brain. Chapter 158. The village bully couldn't bear to see Ruhua always pointing fingers at him, as if he had done something that angered the heavens and the people. It was as if he was the arbiter, as if he was a great hero who fought against the evil forces. The village bully wanted Mu Yenluo just to make things difficult for Ruhua. How dare he be so arrogant in his own land? Ruhua was so angry that he even resented Mu Yenluo. One night he directly raped Mu Yenluo, saying that since she lacked a man, he would be merciful and satisfy her. However, Ruhua despised Mu Yenluo. When he found out that Mu Yenluo wasn't a virgin, he despised her even more. He finished in a hurry and didn't forget to despise Mu Yenluo, who was lying on the Kong bed while pulling up his pants. After having sex with Mu Yenluo, Ruhua seemed to be in the right. He straightened his chest and said, "So what if you're the village bully? Even if you want to have sex with Mu Yenluo, you're just going to have sex with her used shoes." Mu Yenluo didn't expect that she would still have such a fate after being disfigured. She still had to be treated like this by a man. In an instant, Mu Yenluo wanted to die. Mu Yenluo directly hung herself from the beam, but Ruhua saved her. Ruhua threatened that if Mu Yenluo wanted to die, she would give her to the village bully. Even her corpse would be given to the village bully. Mu Yenluo was so scared that she didn't dare to seek death anymore. Just like that, she lived with Ruhua. A single man and a single woman lived under the same roof. In addition, the two had already broken through the paper window. Ruhua and Mu Yenluo were entwined from time to time, which made Ruhua feel very good. However, in his heart, Mu Yenluo was just a prostitute who could satisfy his physical needs at any time. He never treated her as an equal. Ning Shu took a deep breath as if he had a toothache. He felt that Mu Yenluo was inexplicably implicated wherever she went, and the one who suffered was Mu Yenluo. Ruhua was also a beast with a human face. What kind of ability was it to bully a disfigured woman? He even despised her while doing it. Later on, the village bully felt that Mu Yenluo was too pitiful after being bullied by Ruhua, so he told Mu Yenluo to send her away. Ruhua, who had just returned from the school, saw the village tyrant and Mu Yenluo pulling each other. She immediately misunderstood and rushed into the central room. She pulled out her ancestral sword and randomly slashed at the village tyrant. As a result, in the chaos, she directly stabbed Mu Yenluo in the stomach. At this time, Mu Yenluo was pregnant and was bleeding profusely from head to toe. Ruhua was scared out of her wits. Mu Yenluo, whose heart was as dead as ashes, fell and jumped into the river outside the house. The villagers searched for her body for several days but couldn't find it. Ruhua was so dispirited that she wanted to die. Only when Mu Yenluo disappeared did Ruhua realize that she had fallen in love with Mu Yenluo. This was the second blow in her life. Ruhua wanted to jump into the river. In the end, he was stopped by the village chief, who blabbered on and on about how the children in the school needed him. Without him, the children wouldn't know what to do. Then when Ruhua said in her heart, "Yen Luo, because someone needs me, I can only live in this world. When the time comes, I will come and find you. I love you," blabbered on. Ning Shu not only gasped for air, but also kept wiping the cold sweat on her forehead. Seeing Ning Shu's face full of cold sweat, Yuelon hurriedly took out her handkerchief and helped wipe the sweat. She asked, "Miss, what's wrong?" "I was scared stiff," Ning Shu said with a toothache. The weak scholar was as vicious as a murderer. Yuelon hurriedly looked left and right. Her face was a little pale. She stuck close to Ning Shu and asked with trembling teeth, "Miss, what did you see? Don't scare me." Ning Shu pushed Yuelon away and said in a bad mood, "How can there be a ghost in broad daylight?" Yuelon immediately breathed a sigh of relief. "Yes, it's broad daylight. What scared you? She's just a child. Don't ask." Ning Shu lifted the curtain and saw Wenruhua walking in front of him. His speed was a little slow, so she guessed that he had left. "Cousin, do you want to get on the carriage? You're a scholar. You must be tired after such a long journey." Ning Shu shouted at Wenruhua. Wenruhua stopped and turned to look at Ning Shu. She asked with a cold face, "How long are you going to follow me? By Qinxiang, there's no relationship between us anymore." "Of course there's no relationship. The real Bai Qinxiang is enjoying life and has long forgotten about you. You're thinking too much." Ning Shu said, "Wherever you go, Qinxiang will follow. Now, Qinxiang has nowhere to go, so I can only look for you." When Ruhua was so angry that her body was trembling. Her face was ashen, and she looked at Ning Shu with a lingering and hateful gaze. "Get on, cousin." Ning Shu smiled and said to Wenruhua. Wenruhua waved his hand and said coldly, "Men and women shouldn't interact so clearly. I won't get on the carriage. I'll sit outside." Wenruhua put down the bamboo basket on her back and hugged it to her chest. She sat beside the secret guard. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu felt that Wenruhua's way of thinking was very strange. If she had a backbone, she wouldn't get on the carriage. Did she think that sitting outside was an act of backbone? Or was she used to finding excuses for her actions? Ning Shu rolled his eyes and put down the curtain. He said to Wenruhua through the curtain, "Cousin, why are you picking herbs? Don't you even have the money to buy herbs? Why do you have to pick herbs so painstakingly?" Ding. Abuse points, 10. Current abuse points, 50. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. He had hurt Wenruhua again. This cousin's identity was simply a weapon of mass destruction. A casual word of disdain could cause damage to his scholarly cousin's heart. Wenruhua snorted coldly, her tone full of sarcasm. "How can a rich madam like you understand the lives of ordinary people like us? Although I'm poor, I'm earning my own living. At least I'm better than some people who betray their trust and earn their wealth. Since you can't stand it, why are you following me?" Look at how righteous she sounded. If it wasn't for the abuse points, Ning Shu would have thought that Wenruhua really didn't care about it. Wenruhua probably cared about it to death. His fiancée left him because of glory and wealth. Money and power were the pain in Wenruhua's heart. She wanted to obtain them, but she was very repulsed by them. Ning Shu rolled his eyes again. He felt that her brain had become abnormal after reading so much. Everyone said that reading was wise, but Ning Shu felt that Wenruhua was becoming more pedantic the more she read. Other people absorbed the essence from reading, but Wenruhua absorbed the dregs from reading. To say that Wenruhua was full of wisdom was an exaggeration. He was just good-looking and had the temperament of a weak scholar. He was different from other cool and domineering male leads. Chapter 159. The carriage sped along the sandy road. No one spoke in the carriage, and the atmosphere was heavy. Wenruhua looked at the masked secret guard beside her. He had a murderous aura and a cold look in his eyes. It was obvious that he was a highly skilled martial artist. Bai Qinxiang and he were in two different worlds. Bai Qinxiang now had guards and maids when she went out. She really looked like a noble lady. Ning Shu and Yuelon fell asleep in the carriage. It was easy to doze off when the carriage was rocking. Ning Shudu woke up from her nap. She lifted the curtain and asked Wenruhua, "How far is it from your village? You can run so far just to pick herbs. You're pretty good at running." Hearing Ning Shu's words, Wenruhua's face flushed red and then turned pale. She said coldly, "It's none of your business where I go to pick herbs." Ning Shu ran his fingers through his hair and said indifferently, "You probably picked all the herbs around the village. That's why you ran so far. Cousin, I thought you'd be fine after leaving me. I didn't expect you to be so down and out." Wenruhua's face flashed with different colors. She was so angry that her chest was heaving up and down. Ding. Abuse points, 10. Current abuse points, 60. Ning Shu thought, "Damn, I like this feeling of love and hate." Ning Shu pursed his lips and put down the curtain. It was obvious that he didn't want to talk to Wenruhua. They could hear Wenruhua's heavy breathing from outside the carriage. "Stop the carriage. I want to get off." "Bai Qingxiang, what do you mean by this? Did you come back to humiliate me?" Wenruhua said to Ning Shu in the carriage. Ning Shu said indifferently, "Cousin, I'm here to seek shelter from you. I'm at my wit's end. Only you can save me." Wenruhua was furious. "This is the attitude of a beggar. Bai Qingxiang, let me tell you, I don't owe you anything. How dare you come back now?" "Cousin, didn't Qin Xiang apologize to you? In the past, Qin Xiang let you down. Now, Qin Xiang knows that she was wrong." Knowing that cousin didn't go for the imperial exam because of Qin Xiang felt touched and guilty. That's why Qin Xiang came back this time to urge cousin to study and then go for the imperial exam. Ning Shu lied. Wenruhua's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How could this woman have the cheek to say such words? Back then, she had left as soon as she said she would. Now, she was back, saying that she would accompany her for the imperial examinations. Wenruhua was so angry that her blood was boiling. How could a woman be so cheap and shameless? Could it be that she had no shame at all? Wenruhua wanted to get off the carriage, but the secret guard didn't stop the carriage. Wenruhua didn't have the courage to jump off the carriage, so she arrived at the entrance of the village with an ashen face. Ning Shu looked at the village with smoke rising in spirals. He turned to Wenruhua and said, "How did you find such a remote village to live in seclusion for the rest of your life? It's not easy." Wenruhua didn't say anything and walked into the village. Ning Shu's secret guard and Yuelan said, "Let's go too. There's a place to rest." The secret guard glanced at Ning Shu and said, "Miss, I'll stay here and guard the carriage. When it's time to eat, you can ask Yuelan to send some food over." That was good too. With the secret guard's appearance, he would probably cause panic if he entered the village. "All right then. Guard our carriage well. We'll need it in the future." Ning Shu brought Yuelan and quickly walked into the village. When they arrived at the entrance of the village, they saw Wenruhua talking to a woman. This woman had a golden hairpin on her head and looked barely passable. When she looked at Wenruhua, her eyes were shining with adoration. However, Wenruhua's expression was full of impatience and annoyance. She kept looking back. When she saw Ning Shu showed a good expression for the first time. He gently said to Ning Shu, "Cousin, why are you only here now? I've been waiting for you for a long time." Before Ning Shu could say anything, the woman with the golden hairpins suddenly exploded. She pointed at Ning Shu and asked Wenruhua sharply, "Mr. Wen, who is this woman? What's the relationship between the two of you?" "It's none of your business. Miss He, I hope you won't disturb me in the future. Otherwise, other people's gossip will be bad for your reputation." He Xiaohua's finely trimmed eyebrows suddenly raised. She put her hands on her hips and said, "Who dares to talk about me in this He village? So what if I like you? As long as you marry into my family, your life will be better than now. In the future, you won't have to suffer when your students can't pay for their tuition." Wenruhua saw He Xiaohua's vulgar appearance and said sternly, "Miss He, I'll say it again. It's impossible between you and me. Just give up." He Xiaohua was a woman after all. She was rejected by Wenruhua in front of such a beautiful woman like Ning Shu. He Xiaohua was angry and anxious. Ning Shu said fiercely, "Just you wait," and ran away crying. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and said to Wenruhua, "This woman is very cute. She really likes you. Why are you so against it?" When Ruhua's expression became worse, it was as if it was embarrassing to be liked by He Xiaohua. Moreover, He Xiaohua's temperament and appearance were not as good as Bai Qinxiang. Even when Ruhua couldn't deny that Bai Qinxiang was very beautiful now. Although her face was covered, her graceful figure and noble temperament were countless times better than the rustic He Xiaohua. Moreover, her light tone just now had a hint of surprise. It was as if he, when Ruhua, had fallen to the point of being liked by a woman like her. Ding abuse points 10. Current abuse points 70. 2333's voice was very excited. Come on, Ning Shu. Do your best and raise the abuse points to 100. She was just casually asking a question. How did she end up poking at Wenrua's sore spot? Why was her heart so fragile? When Ruhua flicked her sleeve and coldly snorted, "It is impossible between me and Xiaohua. Her brother relies on the fact that his father is the village chief to bully everyone in the village. You also saw earlier that Xiaohua is just like her brother, unruly and overbearing. Even if I, when Ruhua, am unable to bear it, I will not marry such an unruly and rude girl." Ning Shu was speechless. He should really let this woman be alone for the rest of her life. She felt too good about herself. If she was in a modern society where there were more men than women, she would definitely be slapped in the face. He felt that this Wen Ruhua did not know how to be a person at all. She was simply an idiot. No wonder He Xiaohua's brother hated when rushing. Ning Shu chuckled and did not say anything. Beside him, Yuelan also curled her lips. Ning Shu followed Wen Ruhua to the thatched hut. The hut was surrounded by a bamboo fence. Some messy vegetables were planted inside. There were overgrown weeds and no one took care of it. Not far from the hut was a big river. In the plot, Mu Yanluo jumped into this river because she was injured and had a miscarriage. Chapter 160. Ning Shu couldn't figure out why Wen Ruhua would choose such a place near the river. If there was a storm and the river rose, wasn't she afraid that it would wash away his house? Or was it to serve the plot so that Mu Yanluo could drag her injured body into the river and disappear to meet the next man? Ning Shu stood in front of the fence and didn't enter. When Ruhua looked back at Ning Shu and said sarcastically, "I forgot that you are the wife of a noble official. How can you get used to living in such a thatched house?" Ning Shu nodded seriously and said, "I'm not used to it. Cousin, I didn't expect you to be living such a hard life. You should have come to me. I can let you live in a house with green walls and gray tiles from my fingertips. You don't have to live in such a house." When Ruhua's face instantly turned ferocious, Ning Shu roared, "Put away your disgusting face. You only got your money by selling your dignity. You're disgusting." Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu felt that there was something wrong with Wen Ruhua's brain. Her paranoia was serious. It was as if she was hurt by the whole world. Ning Shu stood from a woman's point of view. Bai Qinxiang was a little vain and had chosen a man with better conditions. In Wen Ruhua's eyes, this was an unforgivable sin. Had Wen Ruhua not considered that his conditions were not good enough and that he could not give Bai Qinxiang a sense of security? Amitba. Ning Shu felt that it was good that the woman called Bai Qinxiang left Wen Ruhua. Even if she had to go through thick and thin with him, she should be with a man who was worth it. Wen Ruhua was an irresponsible man. Looking at him, he didn't have much of a future. Ning Shu pursed his lips and took out an ingot of silver from his pouch. He threw it on the ground and smashed a small hole. He said arrogantly, "Cousin, Qinxiang isn't comfortable living in this house. Take this silver and ask the village's carpenter to repair the house. I'm afraid this thatched house will leak when it rains." When Ruhua's expression was ferocious, she picked up the silver on the ground and threw it at Ning Shu. She said fiercely, "Scram, take your stinky money and scram. Wen Ruhua, would rather starve to death than accept food given to me." Ning Shu dodged the attack of the silver and picked up the silver on the ground. He slowly placed it into the pouch and calmly said, "Qinxiang only saw that cousin was living too hard and wanted to sponsor cousin so that cousin could live a better life. Afterwards, cousin would use the time to dig herbs to study. Cousin is full of knowledge and it would be a pity to bury these things. What does it have to do with you? Ever since you broke the promise between us, I have nothing to do with you. Bai Qinxiang, what identity are you using to interfere in my life now? When Ruhua heard that Ning Shu was going to sponsor her, when Ruhua felt like her heart was being torn apart. He would rather die than accept this woman's money. Even if he looked miserable now, his heart was free and he would not show fear in front of Bai Qinxiang. Ning Shu seemed to compromise and said, "Okay, whatever cousin says is right. Qin Xiang will not let cousin accept Qin Xiang's money. Cousin, where do I live?" When Ruhua saw that Ning Shu had softened and suddenly felt very carefree. Ever since they met, Bai Qinxiang had been acting high and mighty. She said that she came to seek shelter, but her attitude was very bad. She did not have the attitude that one should have when seeking shelter. Ning Shu and Yuelan chose a room. The room was very simple. Ning Shu suspected that the room would be blown away by the wind. Moreover, the room was a little damp. The thatch at the damp part of the wall was wet and rotten. How could anyone live in this kind of room? Yuelan looked around and her face darkened. Ning Shu said, "Miss has never lived in this kind of room since she was in trouble. How can anyone live in this kind of room? There are insects everywhere. They will bite people to death if they fall asleep. It is better to set up a tent in the yard. It is better than this room." Ning Shu sighed. He thought of Mu Yanluo's disfigurement and living in such a place. She had to face Wen Rusheng's cynicism and do housework. She even had to satisfy Wen Ruhua's desires. At that time, Mu Yanluo struggled to live. No wonder she was accidentally injured and had a miscarriage. She jumped into the river. This kind of life was worse than death. Ning Shu wiped his face and said, "Let's set up a tent in the yard. It is not worth it to be bitten by insects." Ning Shu would not let himself suffer. Ning Shu and Yuelan worked together to set up a tent. When Rua's face darkened as she looked at them, she said coldly, "Since you are not used to living in my room, why did you come to me? Aren't you very rich? You can find a better place to live than this place." Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua from the corner of his eye and said disdainfully, "Cousin, have you never thought about why I refused to marry you?" Ding. Abuse points, 10. Current abuse points, 80. Ning Shu, hurry up. Faster. Put in more effort. 2333's voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu said, "Scram? Why?" When Rusheng said mockingly, "Isn't it because you are vain and broke the promise between us to marry the son of an official? You want to live a good life." Ning Shu waved his hand. No, of course not. If you want to know why, I can tell you. Although you're not bad-looking, you don't pay for your meals with your face. Although you're well-read, you've never taken the imperial examinations. You haven't even taken the imperial examinations. As for the high scholar and elementary scholar examinations, there's no need to talk about them. You've been studying since you were young, but when you got married and started your career, you were still a nobody. You didn't have any scholarly achievements, and the imperial examinations were all level 1, 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 level 1. By the time you're done with the examinations, you might not be able to pass many times. At the very least, you should set an example for the children of He Village and let them know that they can make a name for themselves by studying. You've studied so many books, but you live in such a dilapidated house, wear clothes full of patches, and eat food without oil. The children in school think that you're so miserable that studying is useless. What's the point of studying? Do you still have dignity in front of the children? Only when you are strong can people respect you. Power, money, and ability are all signs of strength. Cousin, what do you think you have? I admit that I have betrayed the promise between us, but what you gave me was a promise that was far in the future, an unseen and untouchable promise. Moreover, this promise was illusory to begin with. Am I supposed to give up my down-to-earth life for this illusory promise? Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua with a pair of watery eyes. Cousin, am I right? Chapter 161. Cousin, what do you think you have? What do you have? What do you have? Cousin, am I right? Am I right? Am I right? Wen Ruhua's mind was filled with these words. Wen Ruhua staggered and looked at Ning Shu with a hand over her heart. When she met Ning Shu's sincere eyes, she felt the blood in her chest churning. She felt dizzy and her heart felt like it was being squeezed tightly by a pair of hands, as if it was going to explode in her chest. When Ruhua roared word by word, "You're just finding excuses for your betrayal. You're just quibbling. You're quibbling." Blood seeped out of Wenrua's mouth. Bai Qinxiang's words were just mocking her incompetence. She was the one who had betrayed her promise. How could she be so righteous? Ning Shu pursed his lips. Even animals would choose strong males to reproduce. That was the law of survival. Why did she have to cling on to a stupid promise? If Bai Qinxiang really accompanied Wenruhua to success, perhaps Wenruhua would be the one who betrayed her promise. Ding, 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 ding. Abuse points reached 20. Abuse points reached 100. Ah, Ning Shu, you're amazing. I like it so much. Come on, come on. 2333's annoying voice sounded in Ning Shu's mind. Ning Shu felt embarrassed. How did 2333 become like this? It was a disgrace. Ning Shu said, "Go the hell." When Ruhua staggered into the house and closed the door. She didn't want to face Ning Shu. Yuelon looked at Ning Shu with admiration. "Miss, you made people vomit blood. You're amazing. You're invincible in the battle of words." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Yuelon. "Battle of words? Is there a problem, miss?" Yuelon looked at Ning Shu in confusion. Ning Shu patted Yulan's shoulder. "As long as you're happy." Ning Shu and Yuelon were busy for a while and finally made the tent comfortable. It was time for lunch, but when Ruhua locked herself in the house and had no intention of coming out. The house was also quiet. Ning Shu suspected that when Ruhua was dead in the house. Ning Shu stood at the door and shouted, "Cousin, are you there? Squeak if you're here." The room was quiet and no one spoke. Ning Shu raised his eyebrows. The male lead shouldn't be so weak that he would die so easily. He then shouted, "Cousin, it's time to eat. What are we eating?" There's nothing to eat in the kitchen, not even a grain of rice. Even the rats are crying and running out. "Cousin, how did you end up like this? Cousin, are you there?" The house was still quiet. Ning Shu felt that something was wrong. He said to Yuan, "Yuan, come and knock on the door. Cousin is in trouble inside. Don't worry about whether this broken door can be fixed in the future. Anyway, this house is very poor. There's nothing that a thief would want. Don't worry about the door." Yuelon nodded. She took a deep breath and prepared to use her body to knock on the door. However, the door creaked open. When Ruhua looked at Ning Shu with a purple face, her eyes were filled with extreme disgust. It was fine that Bai Qinxiang had betrayed her promise, but now she was using harsh words to provoke him. She was even more annoying than Bai Qinxiang, who had betrayed her promise. It could be said that Ning Shu had become Wenruhua's enemy. Ning Shu pretended not to see the disgust in Wenruhua's eyes and asked, "Cousin, what are we eating?" Wenruhua said coldly, "Don't you have a lot of money? Just find a random family and you'll have food to eat." Ning Shu looked at Wenruhua and said, "Then what are you eating? Why do you care what I eat? Bai Qinxiang, I don't have any objections if you want to stay here. I can't control you, but don't even think about interfering in my life. You just want to make it up to me, to make up for the guilt in your heart. I won't let you get what you want," Wenruhua said coldly. "Who wants to make it up to you? You just casually said it and you took it seriously." Ning Shu despised her in his heart. Why didn't he think that she was here for revenge? She was here to make things difficult for you. Since Wenruhua had said so, Ning Shu naturally wouldn't let himself suffer. He prepared to take Yuelon to eat farmer's food. Before he left, he asked Wenruhua hypocritically, "Cousin, come with us. You probably haven't eaten meat in a long time. I'll pay someone to kill a chicken and stew it for you. Take care of your body and prepare for the imperial examination. Cousin, do you really want to stay here in mediocrity for the rest of your life?" Wenruhua's expression was very ugly. "You're just an abandoned woman, an abandoned woman. He doesn't want you anymore, so you come looking for me and even point fingers at me. It's not up to you to tell me what to do. What does it have to do with you whether I take the imperial examination or not? Bai Qinxiang, I'm warning you. Don't talk about the imperial examination in front of me. I won't step into the dark official path in this life. I'd rather stay here in poverty for the rest of my life, Wen Ruhua said righteously, puffing out her chest. Ning Shu was speechless. Aren't you thinking too much? You're talking as if you can pass the exam. You're talking about a dark official career. Ning Shu was speechless. This kind of God, I'm number 2 attitude was really Chunibyu. Ning Shu's face twitched. He said, cousin, don't you want to be an official? Be a good official, make decisions for the people of the world, and plead for the people of the world. Since the official path is dark, all the more you should take the imperial examination to wash away the darkness of the official world. Wen Ruhua frowned and then said, your words make sense. But all crows in the world are black. Since ancient times, officials have protected each other. I'm alone. If I can fight against such a big dark organization, then I'm in despair about the official world. Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua with some surprise. It seemed that Wen Ruhua was not really stupid. She only knew how to talk big every day. In the end, she was still afraid of the imperial examination. She was probably afraid of the imperial examination and found all kinds of reasons. There was nothing to say to this kind of person. Ning Shu was about to take Yuelon to eat when he smelled the fragrance of meat. Ning Shu's nose twitched. He turned his head and saw 2 people standing outside the fence. One of them was He Xiaohua, who was wearing a golden hairpin. He Xiaohua was carrying food in her hands. She shouted at Wen Ruhua, Mr. Wen, I brought some food over. Welcome, welcome. Come in quickly, Ning Shu said hurriedly. Oh, you're the beauty that the teacher brought back. You're not bad. Why are you with such a pedantic and stupid person like Wen Ruhua? Next to He Xiaohua was a big-hearted and fat man. He held a fan in his hand and looked very cultured. Coupled with his fat face, he was as strange as it could be. Yet he was proud of it. Ning Shu saw Qi Xing holding a fan previously. That was called elegant. Now, when he saw this guy holding a fan and holding it with his fingers that were as thick as carrots, it was an eyesore. What a sin. Chapter 162. Wen Ruhua looked at them and said coldly, what are you doing here? You're not welcome here. He Xiaohua, even if everyone in the He village is afraid of you, I'm not afraid of you. He Xiaohua, who was wearing a thick golden hairpin, felt wronged. Mr. Wen, I just want to bring you some food. Why are you so mean to me? Ning Shu immediately said, she's just being nice. Miss He, we're hungry. Thank you for bringing us food. Wen Ruhua was livid. Ning Shu said, you're not allowed to eat. I don't accept food given to me. Besides, these food were taken by the village chief. Hidawa's fat face suddenly became ferocious. She pointed at Wen Ruhua with her fan and shouted in a rough voice, One, which eye of yours saw that these food were taken by my father? Are your eyes on your butt? These food are all raised by my family. There's something wrong with your head, even your eyes. Wen Ruhua looked indifferent. Who knows? Oh, my bad temper. He Xiaohua, don't give these food to this kind of person. If you give it to a dog, the dog will wag its tail. Hidawa shouted at his sister, it's a waste of food to give to this kind of person. Brother, don't say any more. Mr. Wen is not that kind of person. He Xiaohua put the food on the simple stone table in the yard and said to Wen Ruhua, Mr. Wen, you have guests in your house. You need something to serve them. Take these food as gifts for the children in school. Ning Shu looked at her and shook his head. To be honest, He Xiaohua was a good girl, but she had a bad temper. Yes, thank you, Miss He. We're hungry. I'm Bai Qinxiang, Wen Ruhua's cousin. I'm here to seek refuge with my cousin. Ning Shu said to He Xiaohua. He Xiaohua's eyes were filled with hostility. She put her hands on her waist and asked, What's your relationship with Mr. Wen? Ning Shu asked Yuelon to sit down and eat. He answered He Xiaohua, Didn't I tell you that I'm his cousin? Don't worry, my cousin and I are just pure cousins. He Xiaohua still had some doubts, but she still invited Ning Shu to eat. She said to Wen Ruhua, Mr. Wen, you should eat some too. I won't eat it. Wen Ruhua turned around and entered the house, slamming the door shut. He Xiaohua's face turned gloomy. Hidehua casually sat beside Ning Shu like a big meatball sitting on a stone bench. Hidehua stared at Ning Shu with wide eyes. Beauty, why suffer with someone like Wenruhua? Why don't you go to Big Brother Dawa's house? You can live in a good house and eat meat every day. You won't have a future with someone like Wenruhua. Ning Shu turned around and looked at the fierce-looking Hidehua, the village bully. The brother was the village bully and the sister was the village belle. They were really outstanding. However, Ning Shu found Hidehua much more pleasing to the eye than Wenruhua. In the plot, Hidehua wanted to send the disfigured Mu Yenluo away. To a certain extent, he sympathized with Mu Yenluo. He also had a selfish motive. His younger sister was madly in love with Wenruhua and wanted him to send Mu Yenluo away. Hidehua and Xiaohua were not vicious people. They were definitely kinder and more honest than Wenruhua. Most of the heartless people were scholars. After reading a lot of books, their bellies were full of twists and turns. Ning Shu said briskly, "Thank you, Dawa. But I came here with a purpose. I want to live with my cousin." Hidehua picked up her fan and waved it. She curled her lips and said, "What kind of man is Wenruhua? Don't mix with him. Don't be influenced by him." Ning Shu smiled and did not say anything. Ning Shu and Yuelan were full. To thank Xiaohua, Ning Shu took out some good rouge and silk flowers and gave them to her. "Miss, don't wear any golden hairpins. You're young. These silk flowers are more suitable for you," Ning Shu said to Xiaohua. Xiaohua was very happy. She reached out and patted Ning Shu's shoulder. Ning Shu immediately coughed. Damn, she was too strong. "Beauty, why don't you stay with Brother Dehua? How can you live here? Even my pigsty is better than this." Hidehua fanned herself and pretended to be elegant as she said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. After the He siblings left, Ning Shu heard the door creak open. Wenruhua came out with a dark face. She glared at Ning Shu viciously. She walked into the kitchen and used a ladle of cold water to mix with the pancakes. Ning Shu was speechless. He really did not understand what Wenruhua was thinking. Ning Shu walked into Wenruhua's room and saw many books on the tattered desk. Ning Shu did not expect Wenruhua to be so hardworking. Randomly picking up a book and flipping through it, Ning Shu's face immediately turned green. The content of this book was a story about a down-and-out scholar and a vixen. Inside, how the vixen seduced the scholar and the erotic things that happened between them. Ning Shu was speechless. Ning Shu picked up another book and flipped through it. The content of this book was about a chivalrous hero who helped the weak and killed corrupt officials. He was loved and respected by everyone. The books on the desk were all stories about the scholar and the brothel girl, the scholar and the lady from a noble family. The descriptions were all very vulgar. It was basically an ancient pornographic novel. Wenruhua read a lot of poetry and books like these. With such books, it was reasonable that she did not take the imperial examinations. Could it be that she read these books by herself? Ning Shu suddenly felt that the marks on the desk were all from Wenruhua. "Who allowed you to touch my things?" Wenruhua walked in and snatched the books from Ning Shu's hands. "Get out! Don't touch my books in the future." Ning Shu wiped his hands with a handkerchief. He felt that the books were dirty. He asked Wenruhua, "Cousin, do you usually read these books? Don't you study? How do you usually teach the children in school?" Ning Shu felt a little disgusted. He felt that Wenruhua was a little like a beast of a teacher. "Those books are already engraved in my mind. I don't even need to read them. I just flip through these books in my free time," Wenruhua said faintly. There was no embarrassment on her face. "You women shouldn't meddle in men's affairs. Cousin, do you like to read chivalrous books?" Ning Shu asked. This great hero ignored the law and killed people as he pleased. The officials are punished according to the imperial court's laws. His actions are considered disregarding human life. Wenruhua snorted coldly. "What do you know? The imperial court is dark. Who knows how long it will take for these corrupt officials to be unlucky? The sooner we kill the people, the less suffering they will suffer. As long as the corrupt officials are in power, the people under their jurisdiction will suffer for another day. Since the law can't punish this person, there should be a great hero to stand up for the people." Chapter 163. Ning Shu silently looked at the agitated Wen Ruhua. She had only casually said a few words, but Wen Ruhua felt as if she had been insulted. She had probably taken the role of a hero who got rid of corrupt officials and killed evil tyrants. Ning Shu felt that Wen Ruhua's character was somewhat dangerous. To put it nicely, she hated evil as if it was her enemy. To put it bluntly, she had a paranoid antisocial personality. She suddenly felt that Mu Yanluo was very noble. She sacrificed herself to subdue these sick men. Get out. You are not allowed to enter my room in the future. You are also not allowed to touch my things. People like you are not qualified to touch my things. Bai Qingxiang, don't challenge my bottom line. This dirty and broken thing, I don't even want to touch it. Ning Shu disdained in her heart and turned to leave. As soon as she went out, she saw the fat village tyrant holding a bunch of wildflowers that she didn't know where he had picked them. He was standing outside the fence holding the flowers. He was really stupid. Beauty, I gave you flowers. Flowers for the beauty. He Dehua saw Ning Shu and immediately came over and stuffed the flowers into Ning Shu's hands. Yuelon mocked He Dehua. This flower is so ugly. How can my young miss like it? He Dehua laughed at Yuelon. Maid Beauty, don't be angry. Next time I will make more. Yuelon snorted arrogantly and didn't speak. You're like this no matter where you go. You like to hook up with powerful men. I guess you haven't told He Dehua that you're already married and that you're an abandoned woman. Wen Ruhua said sarcastically to Ning Shu. She then left with a book under her arm. She was probably going to school. Ning Shu shouted at Wen Ruhua's back. Someone gave me flowers. That means I am charming. Is it my fault that I am charming? Is it my fault? Is it my fault? Wen Ruhua stopped in her tracks. She turned around and roared at Ning Shu, you're so shameless, so shameless. How dare you say such words? You're worse than an animal. You shameless slut. Bai Qingxiang, you're getting more and more despicable. Are you throwing away everything you have? Then why don't you go to a brothel? You're in need of men anyway. These words were truly vicious. Up until now, Ning Shu still couldn't see how this Wen Ruhua had the temperament of a male lead. How could such a person be the male lead? Could it be that Mr. Plotline had forcefully added him in to make up 7 Calabash brothers? However, Wen Ruhua had the stubbornness of a male lead. The world should revolve around me. I'm not wrong, it's the world's fault. Cousin, I'm going to hang out. You have to come visit Qingxiang. After all, you've read so many stories. It's time to put them into practice, Ning Shu said sarcastically. Wen Ruhua was so angry that her body was trembling. She stormed off in a huff. You shameless slut. After Wen Ruhua left, Ning Shu said to He Dehua, thank you for the flowers. Beauty, why are you with Wen Ruhua? He Dehua had already said this countless times. Her expression was full of regret. Even if a beauty like you doesn't want to be with an outstanding man like me, you shouldn't be with a man like Wen Ruhua. Why? You hate Wen Ruhua, but your sister, He Xiaohua, seems to like Wen Ruhua a lot, Ning Shu said with a smile. He Dehua was instantly indignant. The fat on her face twitched. She spat in disdain and said, my sister's eyes are covered with shit. Wen Ruhua is just a pretty boy. My sister likes that face. If it weren't for the fact that I'm afraid my father will break my legs, I'd bring my sister to a brothel to see a pretty boy who's even prettier than Wen Ruhua. Ning Shu was speechless. This brother was also a weirdo. He wanted to bring his sister to a brothel. What a straightforward person. His personality was quite good, but he looked a little too shabby. If this guy was the male lead, Mu Yanluo wouldn't have suffered so much. Ning Shu nodded in agreement. Wen Ruhua is indeed a useless scholar who has achieved nothing. That's right. I finally have a confidant. Beauty, let's become sworn brothers. He Dehua wanted to reach out and hold Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu immediately took a step back. Don't even think about taking advantage of me. He Dehua chuckled. With a swish, she opened her folding fan and fanned herself in a very showy manner. After a long time, Ning Shu and the He siblings formed some friendships. Every day, He Dehua and He Xiaohua would deliver food to him for meals. When Ning Shu said that he had a bodyguard, He Dehua very readily prepared an extra set. However, Ning Shu paid for it. After all, people in the countryside didn't have it easy. He Dehua was initially unhappy, but Ning Shu insisted and He Dehua accepted it. Ning Shu understood that He Dehua wasn't some village tyrant that Wen Ruhua said he was. He was just a little flirtatious. When he had nothing to do, he would flirt with the girls in the village. However, he had never really made a move. But in Wen Ruhua's eyes, this was worse than a beast's behavior. He would destroy a girl's innocence and make the girl angry but not dare to say anything. Ning Shu felt that Wen Ruhua was jealous of He Dehua's unscrupulous behavior. Wen Ruhua could only hide in his room and read pornographic books. How was his behavior more noble than Hedo's? Wen Ruhua was stubborn. Every time the He siblings came to deliver food, he refused to eat it. After the He siblings left, he would eat some dry pancakes or thin porridge. After eating these every day, Ning Shu admired Wen Ruhua for not becoming a bag of bones. He still looked like a dog. It was too unscientific. Every time He Dehua came to Ning Shu, Wen Ruhua would have a cold face and mock Ning Shu for being shameless and wanting to seduce men. He would also mock He Dehua for being a man who picked up used shoes. Even He Xiaohua was implicated. He Dehua was a woman that no man wanted and would never be able to marry in this lifetime. Ning Shu was astonished by Wen Ruhua's actions. It was a skill for a man to be able to speak so viciously. After all, he was someone who had read a lot of books and was a scholar with a belly full of wisdom. Ning Shu and He Dehua didn't feel anything about Wen Ruhua's unpleasant words. However, He Xiaohua was very sad. Wen Ruhua was the person she liked. To be mocked and despised by the person she liked was like a hole being pierced in her heart. He Xiaohua's temper flared up. She put her hands on her hips and shouted at Wen Ruhua, "How am I, He Xiaohua, bad? My father is the village chief. My family has food and drinks. I'm also very good looking. What right do you have to despise me? You're just a teacher who doesn't even have food to eat. What right do you have to despise me? Wen Ruhua, let me tell you, it's your honor that I like you. Don't be so shameless. I won't marry you even if I don't get married in this lifetime," Wen Ruhua said indifferently and very firmly. He Xiaohua was so angry that she cried. She covered her face and ran away. Chapter 164. Ning Shu didn't know where Wen Ruhua's sense of superiority came from. She looked down on He Xiaohua, who liked him, as if he was some kind of noble person. She was actually an ignorant person. He Dehua pointed at Wen Ruhua with her fan and said viciously, "If anything happens to my sister, I will bury you alive. I will do what I say. The villagers don't dare to say anything. Who do you think you are?" He Dehua turned back to Ning Shu and said, "Beauty, go to Brother Dawa's house. This kind of person is too disgusting." "Go comfort your sister," Ning Shu said. He Dehua went to chase after her sister. Ning Shu glanced at Wen Ruhua and turned to go into the tent. Wen Ruhua stopped him and said with a cold face, "Ning Shu, we need to talk." Ning Shu raised his eyebrows and looked at Wen Ruhua. "Cousin, what's the matter? Have you decided to study seriously and take the imperial exam?" "Don't mention the imperial exam. I will never take it in my life. What I want to say is that you have to be careful of your image. Do you know what the villagers are saying about you? They are saying that you are not a woman and that you use your beauty to seduce men. The children in the school all ask me why there is such a woman in the teacher's house. How do you want me to behave in front of the students? By Qinxiang, if you are so unscrupulous and unrestrained, you should leave He village. This place is not suitable for you. The brothel is not suitable for you." Wen Ruhua said a lot. Ning Shu just said, "Your students still don't know that you are reading a book about a scholar and a prostitute. If they know, how will they look at you?" Wen Ruhua's face instantly turned green. Ning Shu roared, "By Qinxiang, I am talking about you. Don't change the topic." Ning Shu didn't want to talk to Wen Ruhua at all. He bent down and went into the tent. Wen Ruhua was just a man who pretended to be righteous. He could do anything but others couldn't. He could do whatever he wanted but others couldn't. Wen Ruhua looked down on women in every way and was a straight man. Tisk, by Qinxiang you, cousin, Qinxiang is tired. Qinxiang wants to rest. Cousin is a gentleman. You wouldn't stand guard outside Qinxiang's tent. cousin wouldn't do such a shameless thing. Ning Shu yawned. Outside the tent, Wen Ruhua's expression was ugly. She had a dark aura around her and her eyes were dark. It was as if she wanted to look through the tent and see Ning Shu. Wen Ruhua snorted coldly. She walked into the house and slammed the door shut. In the tent, Yuelon Ning Shu said, "Miss, let's go. Why do we always meet some strange people?" The male lead was just this willful and inexplicable. When it's time to leave, your miss will naturally know to leave. Now is not the time. Ning Shu yawned and closed his eyes to sleep. Ning Shu didn't take Wen Ruhua's words to heart. When he was bored, he would climb the mountain with the He siblings or catch fish in the river. His life was very carefree. He Xiaohua found a chance to ask Ning Shu, "Why doesn't Wen Ruhua like me?" Ning Shu chewed on a wild fruit and said to He Xiaohua, "Why do you want him to like you? Wen Ruhua has nothing but a body. He can't give you a stable life. He can't even support himself. How can he support you and your child?" Also, Wen Ruhua's personality was really too awkward. It was tiring to live with such a person. He Xiaohua said shyly, "I actually don't need him to support me. Anyway, he's alone. I want him to marry into our family. My father also agrees." Ning Shu spat out the wild fruit in his mouth. Wen Ruhua probably felt humiliated to marry into their family. Ning Shu patted He Xiaohua's shoulder. "Good luck." Under normal circumstances, Wen Ruhua wouldn't agree to it unless he used some special means. Ning Shu came back from climbing the mountain and saw Wen Ruhua standing in the courtyard with a dark face. She was about to explode. "Bai Qinxiang, you keep saying that you're here to supervise my imperial examination, but I think you're here to seduce men. Now you're going around with flower he, and you're not avoiding suspicion anymore. Bai Qinxiang, I really misjudged you in the past. You're so shameless. Do you lack men that much? If you really can't do it, I'll satisfy you." Ning Shu's body shook when he heard this. Wasn't this what Wen Ruhua said to Mu Yanluo in the plot? She was Bai Qinxiang now. "If you don't know how to behave yourself, I'll satisfy you." Wen Ruhua snorted coldly. She brushed past Ning Shu and left. Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua's back and felt that Wen Ruhua might have been provoked by her. However, she didn't do anything. It was Wen Ruhua who was controlling and didn't allow her to interact with He Xiaohua. Ning Shu felt that it was necessary to think about her safety. Ning Shu walked into the central room and saw the ancestral sword hanging on the wall. "Well, I'll use this to protect myself." Ning Shu hid the sword in the tent. Yuelon looked at Ning Shu and asked, "Miss, what are you doing?" "Putting the weapon beside the bed. These things have a murderous aura. It's easy to have nightmares at night." "It's okay. Your miss is strong. Your miss also has a chest." Ning Shu lifted her chest with her hand. Yuelon was speechless. "Miss, why don't you call the shadow guard in?" Yuelon asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu waved her hand. "Wen Ruhua is a weakling. I can deal with her with one finger. There's no need to call your brother shadow guard in. Do you miss him? You can go to the village entrance to see him." Yuelon stomped her feet. "Miss, what nonsense are you talking about? There's nothing between me and the shadow guard. You make it sound like there's something between us." Ning Shu drank water and looked at Yuelon seriously. "Your miss, I really hope that there's something between you and the shadow guard. You'll have someone to rely on in the future. Miss, you're my support. Well, men are unreliable. Without your support, the shadow guard will bully me." Yuelon said. Ning Shu sighed in her heart. She really hoped that something would happen between her big brother and little sister Yuelon. "Beauty, save me. Save your brother Da." He Dahua ran over. The fat on her body was trembling. When she ran, it felt like the entire ground was shaking. She was like a meatball running over. Ning Shu spat out a mouthful of tea. He Dahua ran in front of Ning Shu and plopped down on the chair. The chair squeaked as it couldn't bear the weight. He Dahua panted. Her breathing was rough like someone snoring. Ning Shu's mouth twitched. "Are you being chased? It's scarier than being chased. Only you can help me." He Dahua squeezed out tears and looked at Ning Shu. Chapter 165. Ning Shu saw that Hidahua's face was so wrinkled that her eyes couldn't be seen. He asked, "What's the matter?" Hidahua stretched out her chubby hand, wanting to hold Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu immediately picked up the teacup and stuffed it into Hidahua's hand. "Beauty, seeing that we're so compatible, why don't you marry me? I think our personalities are very compatible. We're both people who don't care about trifles, unrestrained, and love freedom." Hidahua looked at Ning Shu and howled, "My father wants me to get married. Otherwise, he'll kick me out of the He family village." Ning Shu pursed his lips. "When did we get along? At most, we're just friends who drink and eat. We're just acquaintances who hunt wild hares in the mountains. You want me to marry you? Can you be more reliable?" Ning Shu said angrily. "You can choose any girl in the He family village. Besides, you're so ugly. What if you affect the children?" Ning Shu bluntly attacked Hidahua. Hidahua's chubby hand slapped the elephant leg. Ning Shu said, "Beauty, do you know what I like the most about you? I like your sense of humor. In the entire He family village, which man is more outstanding than me?" Ning Shu was speechless. Yuelon raised her eyebrows and snorted at Hidahua. "How can my miss marry you? My miss is the prime minister, ahem." Ning Shu coughed and interrupted Yuelon. Yuelon anxiously stomped her feet and pursed her lips. "Miss, are you really going to marry this person?" Yuelon didn't know how to describe Hidahua. "Beauty, don't worry. As long as you marry your big brother Dahua, you'll be in charge of everything. The chickens, ducks, and fish in the house will all be yours. I'll also be yours." Hidahua patted her chest until the fat on her chest trembled. "I forbid it." When Rua's voice suddenly rang out, Hidahua immediately turned to look at her. "Which bastard said no? If I say yes, it's okay." When Ruhua was so angry that her face turned ashen, Ning Shu mocked, "By Qinxiang, you're really scheming. It's only been a few days and you're able to make the village bully marry an abandoned woman like you. He even gave you the family's property. You're not just a little vain." When Ruhua looked at Ning Shu with red eyes, "By Qinxiang, you're using me again. You're treating me as a ladder for you to climb up." Hidahua's eyebrows. "You can understand what he's talking about. I don't understand him to understands what he's talking about. Yours your taste sees your taste zest, s." When Ruhua looked at Hidahua with disdain, "Your taste is just like that. You actually took a fancy to an abandoned woman who was chased out of the house." Hidahua spat at when Ruhua and raised his chin. "It's none of your business what kind of woman I marry. It's none of your business what my taste is like. I'll marry whoever I want." When Ruhua was disgusted by Hidahua's spitting, she felt insulted and snorted coldly. She turned and went back into the house, slamming the door. Hidahua looked at Ning Shu and said, "Beauty, brother Dahua values you as a person. Your past has nothing to do with me. You're the first person I like. You're boorish and unrestrained. Our personalities are quite good. I don't want to marry a bashful woman." Ning Shu felt that Hidahua was quite interesting. He wasn't a good person, but he wasn't a bad person either. He had a high status in the He family village. He had his own principles and was very sly. This kind of man wouldn't be taken advantage of. He was a little scheming, but his thoughts weren't bad. It was just that his looks were a little shabby. He couldn't survive in a world where looks were important. Ning Shu looked at Hidahua with pity. If this kind of man had the ability to climb up, he would definitely be a noble. His personality was completely different from the stubborn Wenruhua. Ning Shu felt that a man should be sly and thick-skinned to live a better life. "Beauty, think about it. Give me your answer in a few days." Hidahua fanned himself and walked away. It was completely different from when he came in with snot and tears. "A toad wants to eat swan meat. Miss, that Hidahua doesn't even look at himself. He actually wants you to marry him," Yuelon said disdainfully. Ning Shu didn't care. He said indifferently, "How can one predict life's opportunities? He's like this now. Maybe after a few decades, he'll be different." Some people couldn't be bullied, but people like Wenruhua could be bullied casually. One look and one could tell that she wouldn't have any future. The sky darkened. Ning Shu and Yuelon were eating when the door creaked open. Wenruhua came out of the room. Wen Ruhua walked over and scooped a bowl of porridge for herself. She ate silently. After eating, she put down the bowl and chopsticks and asked with a sullen face, "Are you really going to marry Hidehua?" Ning Shu poked the food in his bowl with his chopsticks and said indifferently, "Why not?" Wen Ruhua sneered, "Don't tell me you don't know what kind of person Hidehua is?" Ning Shu nodded. "Of course I know what kind of person Hidehua is." Wen Ruhua suddenly became agitated. "Since you know what kind of person Hidehua is, you're going to marry someone like him? He's a tyrant in the village." Ning Shu pursed his lips. "Why can't I marry him? Let's not talk about whether Hidehua is a tyrant or not. As long as he treats me well, why can't I marry him?" Actually, this was a stupid question. If your man was a bad guy but loved you, would you want such a man? What does the world have to do with me? A woman's heart is very small. It can only fit one man. Therefore, Ning Shu didn't want to bother with Wen Ruhua when he used this kind of logic to pressure her. "Bai Qinxiang, you're hopeless. You did such a thing for your own vanity. Don't you feel guilty?" Wen Ruhua roared at Ning Shu. "Damn, what did she do? What did Hidehua's tyrant have to do with her marrying him? Using this reason to stop her from marrying Hidehua, was there nothing wrong with her brain? If she didn't marry Hidehua, he wouldn't be a tyrant anymore." In short, this logic had successfully made Ning Shu dizzy. Wen Ruhua said coldly, "Bai Qinxiang, if you're really so desperate for a man, I can satisfy you. You can even marry a man like Hidehua. You're really desperate." Slap. Ning Shu slapped Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua was stunned. She didn't seem to have realized what had happened. She stared blankly at Ning Shu. Ning Shu attacked with both hands, showering Wen Ruhua's head and face with ferocious slaps. Chapter 166. Ever since he came to this world, Ning Shu had never hit anyone with his own hands. This body strength was pitifully weak. But now, Ning Shu was really disgusted with Wen Ruhua. He humiliated a woman to gain balance in his heart. Just because Bai Qinxiang had wronged him and betrayed his promise, he was simply a piece of trash. Even the real Bai Qinxiang had not wronged Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua held on to some promise and felt that she was the most miserable person in the world. "Well, come here. Your miss is a little tired." Ning Shu felt his hand tremble. He had used too much force. "Impudent, how dare you?" Wen Ruhua covered her face and looked at Ning Shu in disbelief. "You actually dared to hit me?" Ning Shu blew on his fingers and looked coldly at Wen Ruhua. "If you dare to squawk in front of me in the future, I will cripple you. Bai Qinxiang, I will kill you, you bitch." Wen Ruhua wanted to rush into the room to get the sword, but Ning Shu said coldly, "Are you sure? I have a guard with strong martial arts. If I blow this whistle, you will die before you kill me." Wen Ruhua's body froze. Ning Shu walked in front of Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua took 2 steps back and looked at Ning Shu maliciously. "Bitch, what do you want?" Ning Shu said gently to Wen Ruhua, "Cousin, I want you to start reading tomorrow. Don't read those messy books. Hurry up and study for the imperial examinations." "I said before that I will not participate in the imperial examinations. Also, what does what I read have to do with you?" Wen Ruhua said with a pale face. Ning Shu said indifferently, "You can't read too many of those books. It's not good for your body. Also, cousin's food is bad. If you continue to play like this, sooner or later you will be annihilated." "I don't understand what you are saying." "Move, I want to go in and sleep," Wen Ruhua said coldly. Ning Shu's voice was very gentle. "Cousin, tomorrow morning Qinxiang will wake you up to study. If you don't study, you will die." Ning Shu waved the whistle in her hand. Wen Ruhua glanced at the whistle and entered the house angrily, slamming the door behind her. Ning Shu curled his lips and said to Yuelon, "Let's sleep too. Be more vigilant at night." Ning Shu entered the tent. First, he lifted the quilt to look at the treasured sword before going to sleep. Deep into the night, the sounds of frogs croaking could be heard everywhere. Wen Ruhua tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. She reached out to touch her face and hissed in pain. She secretly hated Bai Qinxiang for being so vicious. This woman was just so vicious, a vicious bitch. The moonlight shone through the window onto Wen Ruhua's face on the bed. Her pale face looked like a ghost under the moonlight. It was ferocious and terrifying. When Rua's chest rose and fell violently, clearly she was angry. She flipped over and sat up on the bed. Through the window, she looked at the tent in the courtyard. Her heart was filled with anger. She got off the bed and put on her shoes. She quietly opened the door and walked out of the tent. Hearing the sound of breathing inside, Wen Ruhua sneered silently. It was good that he was asleep. She carefully entered the tent and walked to the side of the bed. Wen Ruhua reached out to remove the whistle from Ning Shu's neck. This was the first time Wen Ruhua had done something like this. She was so nervous that she held her breath. Her outstretched hand was shaking. Just as she was about to succeed, a bright light flashed in front of her eyes. Before Wen Ruhua could react, she felt something cold pierce into her lower abdomen. Pain immediately spread through her entire body. Wen Ruhua let out a blood-curdling scream as she felt the cold object penetrate deeper into her body. Wen Ruhua screamed in pain. "Miss, what's wrong? What's wrong?" Yuelan, who was sleeping, jumped up when she heard the scream. Ning Shu said coldly, "Light the lamp." Wen Ruhua, who was lying on the ground, was groaning. She was terrified. When she heard Ning Shu's voice, she immediately shouted weakly, "Cousin, it's me. Save me." Ning Shu pretended not to hear Wen Ruhua's voice. When Yuelan lit the oil lamp, Ning Shu seemed to see Wen Ruhua lying on the ground. Wen Ruhua was lying in a pool of blood. Her face was bruised and she had lost too much blood. Her face was unrecognizable. Ning Shu screamed as loudly as he could, breaking the silence of the village. Then, the dogs in the village started barking. The quiet night started to become restless. "Cousin, why is it you? Cousin, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me." Ning Shu forced himself to squeeze out 2 drops of tears. He wanted to touch Wen Ruhua but didn't dare to. Ning Shu was afraid that his hand would be smeared with blood. "Cousin, I'm sorry. I thought it was a thief. Cousin, what should we do?" Ning Shu looked like he was out of his wits. Wen Rua's heart was filled with fear and anger. She felt that her life force was about to be drained away along with her blood. When she heard that the culprit was only babbling and not taking any action, Wen Rua's heart was filled with hatred. "Go get a doctor," Wen Ruhua said weakly. Her lips were already turning purple. Ning Shu immediately said, Okay. Cousin, wait for me. I'll go get a doctor now. There are herbs in the courtyard that can stop bleeding. Go get them." Wen Ruhua used a lot of energy to say this. Ning Shu seemed to be out of her wits. She asked Wen Ruhua, "Cousin, should I call for a doctor first or get the herbs for you first? I don't know any herbs. What do they look like? If they are herbs that promote blood circulation and remove blood stasis, you will bleed even faster." Wen Ruhua really wanted to kill this bitch. "Beauty, what happened? I heard your heroic voice from afar." Hidahua walked over with a few villagers behind her. Ning Shu immediately said, "Go and see cousin. Something happened to him." Hidahua glanced into the tent and ordered the villagers beside her, "Go get a doctor. Help Mr. Wen to the bed." "Help me get the herbs first," Wen Ruhua said with difficulty. Hidahua said indifferently, "Drive him to get the herbs." Wen Rushing took the herbs. Ning Shu took it and chewed it before pressing it on Wen Ruhua's wound. Yuelan also chewed the herbs. It was so bitter that Yuelan's face scrunched up. Hidahua didn't seem to care about Wen Ruhua's life or death. She raised her caterpillar-like eyebrows and asked, "How did he get injured in your tent?" Ning Shu's face showed uneasiness and guilt. He said to Hidahua, "I didn't do it on purpose. It's just that cousin came to my tent in the middle of the night. I heard the commotion and thought it was a thief. So I took out my sword to protect myself." Hidahua smacked her lips. Coming to a girl's room in the middle of the night. Isn't he up to no good? A gentleman would do that. Usually, he flaunts himself as the descendant of a gentleman. He's just like a flower thief. Do you think I'm blind? Chapter 167. Wen Ruhua, who was lying on the bed, was starting to lose consciousness. She felt that she was going to die. When she heard Bai Qingxiang wailing in her ears, it was as if he had died. Wenruhua hated her to death. This woman had abandoned him before, and now she was going to kill him. "Doctor, the doctor is here." A villager brought the doctor over. Ning Shu immediately shouted towards Wenruhua, who was on the bed, "Cousin, the doctor is here. You'll be fine." "Cousin, I really didn't do it on purpose. Cousin, please don't let anything happen to you. If anything happens to you, what will happen to Qin Xiang?" The doctor took Wenruhua's pulse and shook his head. "You have lost too much blood. It is a little dangerous." Ning Shu was speechless. How could the male lead die so easily? "Cousin, my poor cousin. Doctor, is there anything you can do? As long as you save my cousin, I will do anything." Ning Shu wailed. "Cousin, I am sorry. It was pitch black at that time. I really didn't know it was you. There is ginseng or something that can make her die." The doctor also knew that this was unrealistic. Ginseng was something that only rich people prepared. It was good enough that the people of the He family village could eat their fill. How could there be ginseng? Ning Shu had money on him, but how could he buy ginseng in the middle of the night? Ginseng was not an ordinary medicinal herb that could be bought with money. Moreover, Ning Shu did not want to spend money on Wenruhua. Ning Shu firmly believed that the male lead would not die so easily. "I have ginseng at home," Hidahua said. When Wenruhua heard Hidahua's words, she did not care about the usual hostility between the two of them. She looked at Hidahua with an expectant gaze. "Go to my house and ask my sister to bring the ginseng," Hidahua said to a villager. Ning Shu secretly glanced at Hidahua. When did Hidahua become so generous? She actually used ginseng to save Wenruhua. It was as if the sun rose from the west. Wenruhua's wound was bandaged by the doctor with a cloth strip to prevent it from bleeding too much. In addition, with the help of the herbal medicine, the bleeding had stopped, but Wenruhua felt like she would die at any moment. After a while, hurried footsteps could be heard. Xiaohua's clothes were a little messy. It was obvious that she had come in a hurry. Xiaohua looked at Wenruhua, who was lying on the bed, and her face turned pale. She quickly took out the ginseng in the box. The ginseng was as thick as a thumb, and its roots were intact. It was a very valuable ginseng. He didn't expect the village head's house to have such a good thing. "Doctor, how do I use this?" Xiaohua was very anxious. Wenruhua heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the ginseng. She also found Xiaohua pleasing to the eye. Hidahua reached out and took the ginseng from Xiaohua's hand. Xiaohua looked at her brother in astonishment and said anxiously, "Brother, what are you doing? Mr. Wen is still waiting for the ginseng. How can you give such a precious thing to him so easily? Wenruhua is not worth the ginseng. This thing is our father's lifeblood." Ning Shu wiped his tears with a handkerchief and stammered, "Just tell me what you want. As long as you can save my cousin, I'm willing to do anything. It's all my fault. It's all my fault that my cousin became like this. Cousin, I'm sorry. I'll give you all the money I have," Ning Shu said to Hidahua. Hidahua waved her hand and squinted at Ning Shu. She said, "Why are you talking about money with me? Brother, what do you want? Mr. Wen can't wait." Xiaohua said very anxiously, "This good thing should be used on our family. If Wenruhua agrees to marry Xiaohua and marry into our He family." Hidahua's expression was very cold. "Of course, you can refuse." Xiaohua's face suddenly turned red. She was very shy. "No." Wenruhua's eyes widened, and she shouted "no" with a strong voice, as if she was experiencing terminal lucidity. "That's right." Ning Shu immediately finished Wenruhua's words. "If you save my life, I'll repay you with my body. If you give me a drop of water, I'll repay it with a spring. I'll agree on behalf of my cousin. Hurry up and give my cousin the medicine." Wenruhua's eyes widened as she stared at Ning Shu. Her bruised face was contorted. She made a gurgling sound from her throat and fainted, unconscious. Hidahua looked at Ning Shu. "He'll kill you when he wakes up." Ning Shu blinked and looked at Hidahua. "Am I wrong? My cousin is a scholar. Of course, he understands this." Hidahua opened her folding fan and fanned herself coquettishly. She curled her lips and looked at Wenruhua on the bed. The doctor just used some ginseng roots to boil the medicine and poured it down Wenruhua's throat. He told Wenruhua some precautions and left. He Xiaohua now served Wenruhua as her husband. She wiped the cold sweat on Wenrua's forehead and wiped her hands. She was so shy that it seemed like she was shrouded in happiness. Ning Shu yawned and saw that Yuelan had fallen asleep leaning against the door frame. She was drooling. This girl's nerves were too thick. Ning Shu pushed Yuelan. Yuelan immediately opened her eyes and looked at Ning Shu. She asked, "Miss, how is she?" "She won't die," Ning Shu said lightly. Seeing that Wenrua's condition was stable and the villagers had all gone back, He Dahua yawned and asked He Xiaohua to go back. However, He Xiaohua said that she wanted to stay and take care of Wenruhua. He Dahua let her be. She walked to Ning Shu and said, "Beauty, I didn't expect you to be so violent when you're so weak. I'm a little scared of you now." Ning Shu immediately squeezed out 2 drops of cat urine and said guiltily, "I was careless." "Then he deserves it. He must be up to no good in the middle of the night." He Dahua rolled away like a big meatball. Ning Shu looked at He Xiaohua who was taking care of her and asked her, "Xiaohua, my cousin doesn't seem to like you. Even if you get married, you won't be happy. If you marry a man, follow the man. If you marry a dog, follow the dog. When he marries into our family, I will have the final say. Besides, how am I not good enough for him? I just need to train him slowly." He Xiaohua did not seem to be worried that Wenruhua did not like her at all. As long as they got married, everything would be solved. Ning Shu was speechless. She married Wenruhua just like that. Ning Shu looked at Wenruhua who was lying on the bed in a mess. He chanted Amitabha in his heart and then went back to sleep with Yuelan. "Miss, when can we leave here?" Yuelan's face was filled with anger. "That man sneaked into our tent in the middle of the night. What does he want to do? He's a beast." Ning Shu touched the whistle in front of her chest. She was afraid that Wenruhua wanted to steal her whistle and give it to her. After all, that was what happened in the plot. Wenruhua raped Mu Yanluo. Chapter 168. Actually, Ning Shu's guess was right. Wenruhua wanted to steal her whistle, but the main purpose of stealing the whistle was to obtain Ning Shu's body. Hearing that Ning Shu wanted to marry He Dahua, Wenruhua's heart was filled with anger and humiliation. This woman would rather marry someone like He Dahua than care about him. Wasn't it just because He Dahua had power in this village? This woman was like a fly that smelled feces and stuck to him. She was indeed a bitch. Wenruhua wanted to get Bai Qinxiang's body first. Even if Bai Qinxiang married He Dahua, she was just a used shoe that he had slept with. This way, he could take revenge on Bai Qinxiang and humiliate He Dahua. However, Wenruhua's imagination was very beautiful, but the reality was completely different. How did his ancestral sword end up in Bai Qinxiang's hands? Ning Shu and Yulan went out and saw a shadow guard in black standing in the yard. If it wasn't for the moonlight, it would be hard to notice him. "Miss, what are you shouting for?" "I heard it at the entrance of the village." Ning Shu asked, "There's a smell of blood. Who's injured?" Ning Shu waved his hand and said, "It's okay. Go back and sleep. It's all settled." The shadow guard said to Yulan, "Be careful. Miss is unreliable." "Hey, how could you say bad things about her in front of her? Do you still want to live?" Yulan nodded, "I know." Then, the shadow guard leisurely left. Ning Shu asked Yulan, "Am I really that unreliable?" Yulan looked at Ning Shu and said bitterly, "I'm with Mississippi. I don't know what will happen in the next second." Ning Shu was speechless. She also didn't know what would happen in the next second. She didn't know how to calculate. "Go to sleep. I'm tired after a night." Ning Shu lay down. When Ning Shu woke up the next day, it was already noon. He first went into the room to check on Wenruhua. She still hadn't woken up. He Xiaohua was taking care of her. "You are awake. There is some food on the table," He Xiaohua said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu felt that He Xiaohua was very virtuous, but she was a bit overbearing. As the daughter of the village head, she had the right to be willful. Putting aside all these, He Xiaohua was still a good woman. Wenruhua was lucky to have the halo of a main character. After sleeping for a few days, Wenruhua finally woke up. The first thing she did when she woke up was to ask He Xiaohua to get lost. The second thing she did was to ask Ning Shu to get his ass in front of her and serve her. She wanted to take revenge on Ning Shu for agreeing to the marriage against her wishes. However, He Xiaohua and Ning Shu both ignored him. Wen Ruhua was so angry that his wound exploded and started bleeding. Wen Ruhua did not dare to be angry anymore. He Xiaohua had already regarded Wen Ruhua as her husband, so she spoke much more casually and unintentionally hurt Wen Ruhua. Moreover, He Xiaohua had never been to school and was illiterate. Sometimes, when Wen Ruhua said something meaningful, He Xiaohua would be dumbfounded. Wen Ruhua would rather die than marry such a woman. Moreover, she wanted to marry into the family. It was simply trampling on his male dignity. Wen Ruhua hated Ning Shu the most. She hated her for being arrogant, despotic, and high and mighty. She hated her for not letting her do it obediently. She hated her for hurting herself. She hated her for agreeing to the marriage. She hated her hypocritical face. Ning Shu naturally saw the hatred in Wen Ruhua's eyes. However, he pretended not to see it. Wen Ruhua humiliated Mu Yanluo. Mu Yanluo was stabbed in the lower abdomen when she was pregnant. She jumped into the turbulent river. How could Wen Ruhua understand that kind of pain? Ning Shu asked Wen Ruhua with concern, "Cousin, how are you feeling today?" Wen Ruhua looked at Ning Shu maliciously. "Are you disappointed that I didn't die?" "Cousin, what are you talking about? How could Qin Xiang bear to see you die? Qin Xiang was really careless. Besides, I didn't know that you sneaked into the tent in the middle of the night. I thought that you were a beast with a human face and a beast's heart. That's why I attacked you. If I knew it was you, I wouldn't have attacked you. You are a gentleman, not a beast." Wen Ruhua's face was ferocious. She looked at Ning Shu and panted. "Get out. I don't want to see you." Ning Shu sighed helplessly. He tucked Wen Ruhua in and said, "Cousin, Qin Xiang knows that you are angry that Qin Xiang hurt you. However, I have already explained it clearly. There is also the marriage between you and Miss He. Qin Xiang saw that Miss He was deeply in love with you. In addition, your life was saved by the He family. Qin Xiang thought that this marriage was reliable and agreed on your behalf. Cousin, you don't have to be grateful to Qin Xiang. This is what Qin Xiang should do. Cousin, you should take good care of your body. When you are better, the village chief will arrange your marriage." Ning Shu ignored Wen Ruhua's red and ashen face. He said, "Since you have found your happiness, Qin Xiang can let go of a big matter. Get out. Get out." Wen Ruhua was like an injured beast. Her eyes were red. Ning Shu roared hoarsely, "By Qin Xiang, get out?" "Okay, don't be angry. I will go out now." Ning Shu turned and left without looking back. Wen Ruhua was so angry that she wanted to die. She felt that meeting Bai Qin Xiang was the greatest misfortune in her life. This woman ruined her life, abandoned her, and now came back to find her. Now her life was a mess. Now, Wen Ruhua was living a life of recuperation. He Xiaohua treated Wen Ruhua quite well. She made nourishing things for Wen Ruhua, killed chickens and ducks, and served her with good food and drinks. However, Wen Ruhua did not treat He Xiaohua well. Ning Shu watched from the side and felt that it was unfair for He Xiaohua. This kind of man did not have a heart. He only had himself in his heart. He was selfish and cold. No matter how good you were to him, he would not feel it. Ning Shu could not help but persuade He Xiaohua. He Xiaohua only shook her head. She said that she was willing to do all these. She was very happy to be with Mr. Wen. She also said that after they got married, she would train Wen Ruhua well and make Wen Ruhua fall in love with her. Ning Shu looked at He Xiaohua's valiant appearance and did not care about her. He could only give his blessings. Wen Ruhua's wound was very deep and would get inflamed from time to time. She would get a fever from time to time, and it was very torturous. Wen Ruhua had lost a lot of weight, her cheekbones were protruding, and her cheeks were sunken. She looked a lot more down and out, not as pretty as before. She did not even look good anymore. She did not look like a gentleman anymore. In addition, during this period of time, Wen Ruhua was very gloomy. Her whole body was covered with a layer of black fog that could not be dispersed. When she looked at people, her eyes were cold. There was a layer of ruthlessness and indifference between her brows. It made people feel very uncomfortable. Chapter 169. When Wenruo's wound was almost healed, she could get out of bed and walk. The village head's family immediately began to prepare for the marriage between Wenruo and He Xiaohua. They decorated the house with red lanterns and colored banners. Wenruo was so angry that she lay back on the bed. Ning Shu felt that he was also part of Wenruo's family. He seriously prepared a few sets of clothes and a new quilt for Wenruo. He even stuffed a few ingots of silver into Wenruo's pocket and told her that it was her dowry. When Wenruo heard the word dowry, she was furious. She threw the ingots of silver in front of her and looked at Ning Shu gloomily. "I will never marry He Xiaohua even if I die." Ning Shu picked up the silver on the ground and corrected him. "Cousin, now you are marrying Miss He and marrying into the He family. You are not marrying Miss He. By Qinxiang, will you only be satisfied when you destroy me?" Wenruo's thin face was ferocious. Ning Shu was stunned and said to Wenruo with grievance, "Cousin, how can you think like that? Everything I did was for your own good. If it was not for Miss He's ginseng, you would be in the 18th level of hell now. You would not be able to talk to Qinxiang like this." Wenruo was speechless. Ning Shu added, "Cousin, don't worry. You need to focus on recuperating. Leave everything else to me. I will definitely let you get married in a grand manner. Besides, cousin, there are many people who can testify to this matter. Don't tell me you want to act shamelessly. Do you want to ruin Miss He's reputation? Don't you hate this kind of behavior the most? Don't you hate seeing He Xiaohua take liberties with women and ruin women's reputations the most? Cousin, you won't do this, right?" Wenruo's lips trembled and she could not speak. Ning Shu said again, "Qinxiang did this for your own good. Besides, Miss He is a good person. She is very suitable for you. You stabbed me and then sold me for the ginseng. It was for my own good. By Qinxiang, don't go overboard," Wenruo roared Ning Shu. Ning Shu's face looked even more aggrieved as she said, "Cousin, I already said that I didn't know it was you. If I knew it was you, I would never have done this. You shouldn't have sneaked into my tent. You should have called me outside the tent. With your behavior, anyone would think that you were up to no good. Besides, the ginseng is for you to use, not me. How can you say that I sold you for the ginseng?" Wenruo was so angry that she couldn't speak. She could only angrily tell Ning Shu to get lost. After that, Ning Shu quickly ran away, leaving Wenruo moaning as she clutched her wound. The village had picked an auspicious date from an old almanac book and let the two children get married. The weather on the auspicious day was very good. The village head's house was very lively with the sound of firecrackers. Even Wenruo's shabby straw hut was very lively. Ning Shu welcomed everyone warmly. The groom, Wenruo, was tidied up and put on red clothes. He was driven out and then helped onto the back of the cow. They were ready to go to the village head's house. Wenruo's face was ashen. There was no joy on her face. She looked at Ning Shu with hatred. Ning Shu smiled and said to Wenruo, "Cousin, you go first. I'll come over later." Wenruo's face was even more ashen. Her body trembled as if she was about to fall off the cow. When Wenruo arrived at the village head's house, she saw that the courtyard was filled with dishes. There were also chickens, ducks, and geese. These were all gifts from the villagers. The vulgar villagers had poor faces. The air was filled with the stench of chicken, duck, and goose excrement. Wenruo was unwilling to accept this. He roared in his heart. This wasn't his life. His life shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be like this. Looking at the bride who was being helped out, Wenruo's emotions became even more intense. This wasn't the wife he wanted to marry. This wasn't the life he wanted. He was going to be married into the village head's family. From now on, he would have to look at the village head's face. Wenruo glanced back and saw Ning Shu walking towards them. His heart was filled with bitterness, hatred, and a strange feeling. That feeling of love and hate made Wenruo unable to control himself. The auspicious time has arrived. "Groom, why aren't you getting off the cow?" Hidehua waved her fan and said to Wenruo. Wenruo ignored Hidehua and stared straight at Ning Shu. Ning Shu immediately walked over and said, "Cousin, it's time for you to get off. It's time for the wedding ceremony. I've said it before. I won't marry He Xiaohua. Wenruhua said to Ning Shu, seemingly in a fit of pique and expectation. He Dehua glared at Wenruhua with a murderous look in her eyes. The village chief's face instantly darkened. He ordered people to violently drag Wenruhua down from the cow's back and drag her to the main hall to perform the wedding ceremony. Wenruhua wanted to struggle, but he was just a weak scholar. How could he compare to the villagers who did farm work? Moreover, Wenruhua was injured now. Wenruhua was forced to perform the wedding ceremony. When he heard the words ceremony is complete, Wenruhua felt as if something had exploded in his heart. His heart suddenly felt empty, so empty that it was unbearable. Ning Shu looked at Wenruhua's red face from outside the central room. All kinds of emotions flashed across his face, but there was no joy of marriage. Ning Shu walked into the central room and said to the smiling village head, "Village head, please take care of my cousin. This is my dowry for him. I heard that the ginseng that saved my cousin is the village head's most precious thing. I specially ordered people to go to the city to buy it." Ning Shu took the ginseng from Yuelon's hand and handed it to the village head. The village head opened the box and saw the ginseng that was similar to the previous one. He immediately became happy and said, Okay. You don't have to be so polite. We're all family." Wenrua's eyes turned red when he saw the ginseng. Ning Shu questioned, "Why didn't you take out the ginseng before?" If Bai Qinxiang had taken out the ginseng earlier, he wouldn't have had to marry He Xiaohua and suffer such humiliation. At most, he could have returned the ginseng to the He family. He wouldn't have fallen to this point for a ginseng. Ning Shu thought to himself, "I love to see you struggle in vain." Ning Shu's face showed a stunned expression and said, "There was no ginseng before. I saw that you were going to get married, so I specially bought one for you as a wedding gift. Did I do anything wrong?" Wenruhua's heart was burning. She wanted to grab her chest and roar to vent the anger in her heart. If she continued to hold it in, Wenruhua felt that she would go crazy. Wenruhua took off the big red flower on her chest and threw it on the ground. She said to the village head, "I've returned the ginseng to you. I won't marry He Xiaohua." The old village head's face turned cold. He Dehua said to Wenruhua coldly, "Bastard, let's see if you can walk out of this central room alive. If you can go back alive, I'll take your surname." He Xiaohua directly lifted the veil and said to Wenruhua with a ferocious face with terrible makeup, "Don't talk nonsense. Let's go to the bridal chamber." Chapter 170. Wenruhua was dragged into the bridal chamber like a pig waiting to be slaughtered. As for the situation in the bridal chamber, Ning Shu did not know what it was like. Ning Shu felt that He Xiaohua should take it easy. After all, Wenruhua still had a hole in her belly. At noon, they had a wedding banquet at the village head's house and were ready to return to the thatched cottage. "Beauty!" Hidawa jumped down from the slope and pretended to be elegant as she opened her fan and fanned herself. Ning Shu said, "Beauty, you see, Wenruhua is already married to my sister. Shouldn't we get married too? You and I are practically a match made in heaven. We'll be even closer." Ning Shu only said one word, "Get lost?" "Beauty, don't be like this. My younger sister is married now. My father has his eyes on me. I don't have a good life." Hidawa chased after Ning Shu. "Don't tell me a man like me doesn't deserve you?" Ning Shu looked at Hidawa. "Get lost." Hidawa touched her nose. "Can you be more tactful? Fortunately, I am magnanimous. Otherwise, I would have been hurt by you." Ning Shu could see that Hidawa was just talking nonsense. He said disdainfully, "If you meet a girl who takes your words seriously, let's see what you will do." Hidawa fanned herself and said with a laugh, "That's good. If she is serious, I will get married immediately. I am casting a wide net." Ning Shu thought, "Get lost?" Ning Shu planned to leave. Anyway, Wenruhua had found happiness. In the future, she would have sex with He Xiaohua and have a litter of babies. It had nothing to do with him. By the way, get rid of this broken thatched cottage. In 3 days, my sister will bring Wenruhua back to her family. This is also Wenruhua's family. You are also my brother-in-law's family. I have long wanted to get rid of this broken thatched cottage. It is too ugly." Hidawa said to Ning Shu. Ning Shu was speechless. Bring Wen Ruhua back to her family. Ning Shu glared at He Dehua. My cousin will kill you if you humiliate him like this. The scholar has been rebelling for 100 years. Look at him. I don't even need to do anything. My younger sister will be obedient. He Dehua said disdainfully. Since you look down on my cousin so much, why did you agree to this marriage? Ning Shu was very puzzled. He Dehua said, first of all, He Xiaohua likes Wen Ruhua very much. Second of all, my father respects scholars and wants to have a child who can read. Oh, so Wen Ruhua was just a tool to borrow his seed. Wen Ruhua had always prided himself on being noble. He probably didn't think that he would have such an image in other people's hearts. Ning Shu originally wanted to leave, but he remembered that Wen Ruhua was going back to her parents' home. He couldn't miss such a rare occasion. Therefore, Ning Shu quietly waited for his return 3 days later. On the morning of the third day, Ning Shu didn't sleep in. He waited at the door early in the morning and asked Yulan to hang 2 strings of firecrackers. Not long after, 2 figures could be seen walking towards them. He Xiaohua was wearing festive clothes, and even Wen Ruhua was wearing brand new clothes. However, Wen Ruhua's complexion wasn't good. Her face was green. On the other hand, He Xiaohua was radiant. It seemed that Wen Ruhua had nourished her very well. Light the firecrackers. Ning Shu called Yulan. Yulan nodded and trembled as she lit the firecrackers. The crackling sound startled Wen Ruhua and He Xiaohua who were approaching. He Xiaohua's face was flushed as she called Ning Shu, cousin. Ning Shu generously called He Xiaohua cousin-in-law, which made Wen Ruhua's face turn ashen. She felt that Wen Ruhua was like a barrel of explosives. Just a glance or a word from others could make Wen Ruhua have a violent reaction. He Xiaohua came over with a gift and then went to the kitchen to prepare lunch. After all, they had to eat lunch here. Ning Shu asked Wen Ruhua, cousin, how are you doing? You and cousin-in-law seem to be very happy. Wen Ruhua's face twitched. She actually gave Ning Shu a very gentle smile. When Ning Shu saw this smile, his hair stood on end. It was very disgusting. Wen Ruhua's face was thin and blue. When she smiled, it was a fake smile. It looked very ugly. Ning Shu smacked his lips and said, cousin, you've become a lot more haggard recently. Who did I become like this because of? Wen Ruhua couldn't help but roar at Ning Shu. What happened? He Xiaohua stood in the kitchen with a spatula and looked at Ning Shu and Wen Ruhua in confusion. Wen Ruhua immediately said, nothing. Talk to your cousin properly. Why do you keep roaring at her? He Xiaohua said and turned to go into the kitchen. Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua with some surprise and said, cousin, it seems that you and cousin-in-law are getting along very well. Strictly speaking, Wen Ruhua was a little afraid of He Xiaohua. In 3 days He Xiaohua had tamed Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua reached out to grab Ning Shu's hand. Ning Shu dodged. Wen Ruhua's face trembled. She said gently to Ning Shu, cousin, let's elope. Cough cough. Ning Shu beat his heart and choked on his saliva. What are you talking about? Ning Shu looked at Wen Ruhua in surprise. Wen Ruhua's face showed pain and sadness. She looked at Ning Shu with regret, affection, and helplessness in her eyes. Ning Shu said, cousin, I really regret it. I shouldn't have been angry with you before. After marrying He Xiaohua, I realized that I have always loved you. Everything I did and said was because I care about you. Cousin, let's go and wander around the world. You can even let me go to the imperial examination. In short, I can't leave you. Ning Shu, he was speechless. But you are already married to cousin-in-law. How can you abandon her? How can cousin-in-law live? Ning Shu curled his lips and said. Wen Ruhua waved her hand. What does He Xiaohua have to do with me? I had no choice but to marry her. I don't love her at all. Cousin, let's leave here. Cousin, what exactly happened? Tell us and we can think of a solution together. Seeing you in so much pain, Qin Xiang also feels bad. Ning Shu said gently to Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua's face revealed an embarrassed expression. She took a deep breath and said, Qin Xiang, I've never seen a woman as loose as He Xiaohua. She's so fierce in bed and doesn't care about my feelings at all. Moreover, she's so excited. You also know that He Xiaohua isn't someone I like. I don't want to have sex with her at all. Qinxiang, the person I've always loved is you. I don't have any feelings for He Xiaohua at all, but she has never considered my feelings. She deserved it. Did you consider Mu Yanlua's feelings when you slept with her? In Ning Shu's kitchen, He Xiaohua shouted, "Cousin-in-law, cousin wants to elope with me. He wants to elope with me." Chapter 171. When Ruhua stared at Ning Shu in a daze. Just a moment ago, he was still warm and affectionate. The next moment, he was so ruthless. When Ruhua was so shocked that she didn't know what expression to make. He Xiaohua rushed out of the kitchen with a spatula. She directly pulled Wen Ruhua's ear and shouted, "Who did you say you were going to elope with? You're too bold. You're already married to me. How dare you elope with someone else?" "Let go of my ear, He Xiaohua." I said, "Let go of my ear." Wen Ruhua's face was livid. She couldn't break free from He Xiaohua's control and couldn't save her ear. "By Qinxiang, you betrayed me. I treated you so well." When Ruhua roared Ning Shu. She looked at Bai Qinxiang leisurely drinking tea. Looking at her own sorry state, when Ruhua felt that death was better than living. "Cousin, what's your relationship with Ruhua? Why did he elope with you?" He Xiaohua questioned Ning Shu. Ning Shu spread her hands. "Cousin wanted to get rid of you, so he pulled me into the water. He saw that I had a carriage and could run faster, so he tricked me into eloping with him." When Ruhua almost spat out blood. Ning Shu roared, "By Qinxiang, you bitch! Cousin, we're leaving first." He Xiaohua pulled Wen Ruhua's ear and left. Ning Shu asked Yulan to sit down and eat. "It's a pity to leave without eating such a big table of food." Yulan also nodded. He Xiaohua is really a powerful woman. "Miss, when are we leaving? I really don't want to sleep in the tent." Yulan said bitterly. Ning Shu ate and said, "We're leaving tomorrow." Great. After the meal, Yulan was very active in packing up her things. Ning Shu divided the things on her body into two portions, one for Yulan and the other for herself. Yulan looked at the banknotes and asked, "Miss, why are you giving this servant so many banknotes? Don't put all your eggs in one basket. If something happens, we can only eat dirt," Ning Shu said indifferently as he leisurely laid on the bed and watched Yulan pack up. Thinking of the days of trekking tomorrow, Ning Shu and Yuelan went to bed quite early. They planned to leave early the next morning. In the middle of the night, Ning Shu was woken up by someone. The groggy Ning Shu thought that Wen Ruhua had snuck into the tent again. He hurriedly took out his sword and stabbed the person on the bed. However, none of them managed to stab him. "Miss, it's me." The secret guard's voice rang out. "The horses are here." "What?" Ning Shu woke up with a start. "What's coming?" Yulan also woke up. When she heard the secret guard's words, her face immediately turned pale. "Miss, the bandits are here." Ning Shu almost jumped up. Why would a bandit come to this remote village in the middle of the night? Coming out to rob in the middle of the night? You are not a thief. There was no such thing in the plot. What's going on? Ning Shu suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. He hurriedly put on his shoes and went out of the tent to see the village head's house was brightly lit. Ning Shu immediately understood where the bad feeling in his heart came from. When rushing was the male lead. He should be entangled with the female lead. However, now he was married to He Xiaohua. This seriously exceeded the plot. In order to reverse the plot, he had to eliminate He Xiaohua as his wife. Just when she decided to leave tomorrow, a bandit appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the night. It was simply too much. He had gone too far. It was all because of her. Yuelan, quickly hide well. Forget it. Secret guard, take Yuelan and hide well. Then come find me. Ning Shu stuffed the package into Yuelan's arms. Yuelan's teeth were chattering. She hugged the package tightly. Ning Shu anxiously asked, "Where is the young miss?" "Young miss, let's go together. These bandits are people who kill without blinking. You and your secret guard brother first find a place to hide. The young miss has something to do now." Ning Shu's guard said, "Take Yuelan and leave first. Hurry." The secret guard did not say anything. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Yuelan and disappeared into the night. Ning Shu took a deep breath and headed towards the village chief's house. She hid not far away and saw a group of people blocking the entrance of the village chief's house. One of them was riding a horse and looked like a bandit leader. The rest of the bandits were relying on their 2 legs. At this moment, the village head's family, the old village head, Hidehua, Hishaohua, and even Wenruhua were caught. Hidehua frowned her caterpillar-like eyebrows. She said to the bandit leader, "What's the matter? You are a guest. Go inside and drink a cup of water." "You want to send us away with a bowl of water?" the bandit leader said murderously. Hidehua looked like she was afraid of death. She lowered her head and said, "Of course it won't be a cup of water. It's already so late. Everyone must be tired. Good wine and dishes will be served soon." "Good wine and dishes are not enough. There must be a woman. Let this woman serve me. Call all the girls in the village over." The bandit leader said arrogantly. The old village head immediately retorted, "Bastard in your dreams. If you want to defile the girls in my village, you will have to kill me." "Damn, old man, I will let your daughter serve me immediately." The bandit leader jumped off the horse and tore Hishaohua's clothes. Hishaohua let out a sharp cry. Wenruhua's eyes flashed. She shouted at the bandit leader, "Wait a moment." Ning Shu, who was hiding, saw Wenruhua make a sound. Seeing his woman being hurt, as a man, he should stand up. "What do you want?" The bandit leader looked at Wenruhua. Wenruhua cupped her hands at the bandit leader, with the elegance of a scholar. "You people are just after money. I know where the valuable things in this house are hidden. I can take you there, but my condition is that you let me join you. I have studied and can be the military counselor of the team." Wenruhua's words shocked the He family and Ning Shu. "My team welcomes anyone. You are a scholar. Okay, you will be my military counselor from now on." The bandit leader patted Wenruhua's shoulder. Wenruhua smiled. Her smile was cold in the dark. She picked up the sword on the ground and said to the bandit leader, "I have a request. I want to kill this woman with my own hands." Wenruhua's body and voice were trembling. There was a gloomy look on her face. The He family looked at Wenruhua in disbelief. Hidehua stood in front of Hishaohua, whose face was as pale as ash, and said coldly, "Wenruhua, it's a waste that you're well educated. Xiaohua is your wife. Do you want to kill your wife? You are an inhumane bastard. I've never acknowledged Xiaohua as my wife. You forced me to marry her. I hate her. I hate her," Wenruhua said coldly. "Every time I'm in bed with her, I feel so disgusted that I'm about to throw up." Chapter 172. Wenruhua had completely darkened, and her true personality was completely exposed. In the plot, Mu Yanluo had endured humiliation and tolerated Wenruhua. In the end, Wenruhua stabbed Mu Yanluo, causing her to lose her child and disappear. This made Wenruhua completely understand Mu Yanluo's position in her heart. However, Ning Shu didn't tolerate him, and there was no reason for her to. Wenruhua's personality had always been stubborn and depressed. Coupled with these things, she had completely turned evil. Now, she wanted to kill Hishaohua with her own hands. Wenruhua slowly walked towards Hishaohua, the tip of her sword scratching the ground with a piercing sound. Hishaohua shook her head and shouted at Wenruhua with tears streaming down her face, "Wenruhua, you can't do this to me." Wenruhua responded to Hishaohua with a sneer. Mississippi Ning Shu heard the voice of a shadow guard. Ning Shu whispered, "Have you hidden Yuelon?" The shadow guard nodded. "Are we leaving now?" "Wait a minute." Ning Shu bit her lips. Mu Yanluo's fate was to be reversed, but other innocent people shouldn't be involved in this battle. She had taken a big step. The plot had changed too much, and the laws of heaven and earth were forcing the plot to be reversed. Ning Shu said to the shadow guard, "Help stop the bandits and let the He family escape." The shadow guard looked at Ning Shu. "What about you? I only have my own way." Ning Shu watched Wenruhua slowly walk towards Hishaohua. "My task is to protect Mississippi. I don't care about the others." The shadow guard said coldly. Ning Shu said in a low voice, "I'm your Mississippi. You have to listen to me." Ning Shu took a deep breath and rushed into the yard, shouting, "Wenruhua, stop. When Ruhua, who was wrestling with Hidehua, was stunned for a moment. Then, she said coldly, "By Qinxiang, what are you doing here? Do you think I'll be merciful just because you're my cousin?" "Beautiful. This woman is beautiful. Just nice, just nice." The bandit leader looked at Ning Shu and started drooling. "Why you here? Is it dangerous?" Hidehua was no longer as sloppy as she usually was. "There's no time to explain. Take your sister's father and leave," Ning Shu said to Hidehua. "What about you? What about you?" Hidehua frowned. When Ruhua saw Ning Shu and Hidehua flirting with each other, she sneered, "None of you can leave today." When Ruhua, "You're really disgusting," Ning Shu spat at Ruhua, then turned to Hidehua and said, "Go, I can hold them off. You can block Hathmes." Before Hidehua could finish speaking, a man in black with a mask on his face appeared and stood beside Ning Shu. "Beauty, Big Brother Flower will remember your kindness in his heart. One day, I will repay you." Hidehua didn't say anything. She glanced at Ruhua, then carried her sister on her back and pulled her father away. Hidehua was also decisive. She abandoned everything at home and quickly ran to the back of the mountain. "Want to run? No one has ever run away from me." The bandit leader shouted to the bandits behind him. The bandits immediately rushed towards Hidehua. The shadow guards took out their swords and blocked them. Their swords flashed, and in a short while, there were several corpses lying on the ground. The bandit leader saw that this person was a tough nut to crack. He shouted to the bandits behind him, "Kill this man and this beauty will be ours. We brothers will share her." When the men saw Ning Shu, their eyes lit up with greed. They rushed towards the shadow guard without any regard for their lives. No matter how strong the shadow guard's martial arts were, he couldn't handle so many people. When Ning Shu saw that the shadow guard was having a hard time, she lifted her skirt and ran away. She hoped that she could share some of the burden with the shadow guards. Chase after her. This woman is an outstanding beauty. She is the wife of a high official. It is very likely that she will make a fortune. When Ruhua tempted the bandit leader quickly led a group of people and Ruhua to chase after Ning Shu. The sky gradually brightened. The roosters in the village were crowing. Ning Shu lifted her skirt and ran in front. A large group of people followed behind her. Although Ning Shu was running with great effort, she didn't run very fast. The people behind her had the mentality of a cat and mouse. They seemed to want to catch Ning Shu when she was exhausted and couldn't struggle. Ning Shu couldn't run anymore. In front of her was a big river. This was the river that Mu Yanluo jumped into. "Why aren't you running by Qinxiang? Why don't you run?" When Ruhua held a sword in her hand, she looked very vicious. Perhaps when Ruhua was more suitable to hold a sword than a pen. When Ruhua imagined herself to be a great hero who punished corrupt officials. Ning Shu turned around and spat at Ruhua. "Ruhua, your hatred of evil is only because you are envious that those high-ranking officials can do whatever they want, but you can't. You want to be like them, but you can't. So you are envious, jealous, and hate them." Nonsense. It's not like that at all. When Ruhua refuted, "I'm doing this for the sake of the people. I want them to live a better life. Without these corrupt officials, the people can live a real life." "Bah, Ruhua, you've joined the bandits. Do you know what bandits are? They burn, kill, rob, kill, and take lives. Everywhere they go, there will be whales." Ning Shu said disdainfully, "Ruhua, you crave power but can't get it. You're still using the mask of righteousness to wrap yourself up. Don't you have any shame? Later, you'll still rob this village and even kill the villagers. What's the difference between you and those corrupt officials?" Ning Shu's heart was on fire. Why hadn't the shadow guards arrived yet? Ning Shu glanced at the river. Did she really have to jump in? "I crave power. If I had power, would you, by Qinxiang, choose the son of a high official?" When Ruhua said indifferently, "When I have power, I'll kill all the corrupt officials in the world." Ning Shu replied with 3 words, "Ha ha ha. Boss, let me tell you a secret. This village has a big secret." When Ruhua ignored Ning Shu and said to the bandit leader immediately asked, "Oh, what's secret?" Wen Ruhua moved closer to the bandit leader's ear and seemed to be saying something. However, the sword in her hand stabbed into the bandit leader's heart. The bandit leader looked at Wen Ruhua in disbelief and his body fell to the ground. Master, first master? The lackeys all cried out in alarm as they looked at Wen Ruhua in astonishment. Ning Shu was also stunned. Looking at the bloody sword in Wen Ruhua's hand, Wen Ruhua's expression was very cold. The gloominess between her eyebrows dissipated. It was as if something had broken out of her body. Wen Ruhua was completely different. It was as if Wen Ruhua was supposed to be like this. Wen Ruhua raised the bloody sword in her hand and shouted loudly, "From today onwards, I'm the boss of this team. From today onwards, I'll lead everyone to live better lives and have more money and beauties. If anyone objects, they'll end up with this corpse." Wen Ruhua kicked the corpse of the boss on the ground. Chapter 173. After Wen Ruhua intimidated the bandits, she turned around and looked at Ning Shu with her sword in hand. Ning Shu extended her hand and said coldly, "Cousin, come here. I'd be crazy if I went there." Ning Shu took a step back. Behind her was the river. There was no way out. Wen Ruhua revealed her white teeth. Ning Shu smiled as if she was bewitching her. "Bai Qingxiang, come here. Do you want me to catch you personally? Are you waiting for your guards?" Wen Ruhua said coldly, "I'll catch you when your guards arrive." Wen Ruhua walked over with her sword in hand. Ning Shu immediately said, "Don't come over. If you come any closer, I'll jump. I'm really going to jump. With your vanity, you won't bear to die." Wen Ruhua didn't stop walking. She obviously knew Bai Qingxiang very well. Ning Shu looked anxious. She lifted her skirt and shouted at Wen Ruhua, "Don't come over. I'm really going to jump." Wen Ruhua was different now. She was no longer a lonely scholar. She had so many subordinates. She couldn't win against Wen Ruhua now. Ning Shu felt that it was her own fault. If she wasn't wearing the female lead skin, grass would be growing on her grave. Sigh, Wen Ruhua, I'm really going to jump. Fuck, I'm really going to jump. Ning Shu lifted her skirt and shouted at Wen Ruhua. Wen Ruhua sneered. Her smile was full of sarcasm. Ning Shu took a deep breath. She knew that she couldn't be caught by Wen Ruhua. If she was caught, she would be tortured by Wen Ruhua like in the plot. Moreover, there were so many bandits. With Wen Ruhua's hatred for her, she would probably treat her like a prostitute and serve these bandits. Thinking of this, Ning Shu no longer hesitated. She jumped into the river and gulped down 2 mouthfuls of water. She heard Wen Ruhua's roar. "Bai Qingxiang, I won't let you go even if you die." "Miss." The secret guard appeared. If you had appeared 1 second earlier, you wouldn't have had to jump. The river was very fast. Ning Shu disappeared in a few seconds after jumping in. The secret guards searched along the river. Wen Ruhua's eyes were red as she shouted at the bandits, "Find her. Even if she dies, we must find her body. Bai Qingxiang, you bitch." Ning Shu could feel the pain of the undercurrent hitting his body. He tried his best to dig with his limbs. Thinking about how Mu Yanluo had suffered a miscarriage and jumped into the river, Ning Shu felt that he hadn't gone overboard at all. Wen Ruhua was originally a person with a flawed personality. If she was in the modern world, she would be a terrorist who would affect the stability of society. Now that Wen Ruhua had become a bandit, she would probably cause chaos wherever she went. Moreover, Wen Ruhua always used justice to flaunt herself. It was so disgusting. Ning Shu dog-paddled for a while and was exhausted. He was hit by the undercurrent in the river and his whole body felt like it was being torn apart. He fainted from the pain. When Ning Shu woke up, half of her body was still soaked in water. Fortunately, she was still alive. The problem was, wasn't she supposed to be at the divine doctor's house? Why did he leave her here and no one cared about her? They were both female leads, but why was there such a big difference? Ning Shu moved her body and felt some pain. There were also scratches on her arms, which were caused by the submerged reefs in the river. Ning Shu looked around and found a man not far from him. He was dressed in white and seemed to be fishing. Ning Shu immediately shouted, "Hero, help! The man in white turned to look at Ning Shu, put away his fishing rod, and left with the bamboo basket. Damn, I've never seen such a heartless person. Ning Shu hurriedly got up and wrung the water from his skirt. He lifted his wet skirt and chased after the man. He didn't have the fate of being the female lead and had even contracted her illness. He had to rely on himself for everything. As soon as he approached the man, Ning Shu smelled the fragrance of medicine on his body. His hair was tied up with a wooden hairpin, meticulous and meticulous. His whole body exuded a cold aura. This coldness came from his bones. It was austere and unapproachable. This was one of Mu Yenluo's harem, the divine doctor. In the plot, Mu Yenluo was saved by a villager and sent to the divine doctor's house. The divine doctor basically didn't do anything, but at that time, Mu Yenluo was in a miserable state with scars all over her body. Perhaps the divine doctor wanted to challenge his medical skills, so he treated Mu Yenluo and healed her like a cheat. Moreover, the scars on her body and face disappeared, just like before. It was even more exaggerated than skin removal. However, Ning Shu could understand. Mu Yenluo couldn't have been disfigured forever. Without her smooth skin, how could she have attracted so many men to the point that they decided to share her? The divine doctor was the calmest and most restrained man in Mu Yenluo's harem. He was also the coldest man. When he was with Mu Yenluo, the only time they had sex was when the divine doctor was concocting a medicinal powder. The powder changed into an aphrodisiac, and its effects were extraordinarily strong. Don't ask how a divine doctor concocted an aphrodisiac. It was all for the sake of the plot. The divine doctor forced himself on Mu Yenluo under the influence of the medicinal powder. Ning Shu stared at the divine doctor's back. Damn it, don't you have hands? Can't you do it yourself? The divine doctor was indeed a divine doctor. After they had sex, the divine doctor gave Mu Yenluo a pill and said that if she put it down there, she would become a virgin again. In other words, he wouldn't take responsibility. Mu Yenluo took the pill and didn't say anything. From then on, the divine doctor never touched Mu Yenluo again. He wasn't like other men who would be infatuated with Mu Yenluo's body after having sex with her once. But the divine doctor didn't. Even when he shared Mu Yenluo with other men, those men would fight for the right to use Mu Yenluo. The divine doctor didn't. He would only do his own thing quietly. But Mu Yenluo liked the divine doctor. He couldn't understand why the divine doctor wanted to join the harem. He didn't feel that he was after Mu Yenluo. He didn't fight for her favor, nor was he infatuated with Mu Yenluo's body. The divine doctor turned around and looked at Ning Shu. He said coldly, "Why are you following me?" The divine doctor's voice was so cold that it made one's heart tighten. Ning Shu squeezed out 2 drops of cat urine and stammered, "This little girl was alone and had no family. I felt that there was no meaning in living, so I decided to jump into the river. If I live, it means that the heavens want me to live. If I die, it means that I'm fated to die. Now that I'm still alive, it means that the heavens want me to live. I must stay strong and live on." Ning Shu clenched her fists and said passionately. The divine doctor looked at Ning Shu as if he was looking at a crazy person and ignored her. Ning Shu continued, "Hero, we can be considered to be fated. The first person I saw when I woke up was you. Since we are so fated, let's be good friends." The divine doctor still ignored Ning Shu. Ning Shu continued, "Divine doctor, I want to be your disciple. I want to know how to cure the aphrodisiac." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.